Chapter 1472. Chu Liyue's sudden action shocked everyone. Weren't they talking about her identity? Why did they suddenly want to fight? Moreover, she was no match for Jiang. Before everyone could figure it out, Chu Liyue had already arrived in front of Jiang in the blink of an eye. Jiang didn't expect Chu Liyue to attack as soon as she said so. Swoosh! Dumpling's figure rapidly grew. Reddish gold flames spewed out and instantly surrounded Jiang. The surrounding temperature rose rapidly, and Jiang immediately fell into a sea of fire. The terrifying flames continued to roast him, causing Jiang to tremble in fear. He might not be a match for this ancient divine beast. Xuanhuan, are you crazy? Jiang frantically retreated as he questioned her sternly. There were still so many people around watching. She actually dared to attack in front of so many people. Chu Liyue was too lazy to speak and slashed down with her sword. When she was a stage 8 martial artist, she could only use her full strength once. Now that she had broken through to the intermediate stage of stage 9, she could basically use her sword 3 times in a row. Her strength was not as good as Jiang but with Dumpling and Zichen around she might be able to fight. At this time, Zichen flapped his wings and flew behind Jiang in the blink of an eye. Jiang had nowhere to retreat. In front of him was the reddish gold heavenly phoenix, behind him was the eagle lord, and there was also a Xuanhuan whose strength had greatly increased. With a wave of his sleeve he set up a barrier around his body. At this time Shiruer's three-eyed eagle had completely broken free from its restraints and flew back. Shiruer carefully and nervously checked it and found that most of the wounds on its body had already scabbed over. And it seemed that its aura was normal and had basically recovered. She looked at the battlefield with mixed feelings. Eagle Lord, Xuanhuan? Father. Jiang Jiwan exclaimed worriedly. Bailey Jun hurriedly pressed her shoulder. Xuanhuan, don't worry. That Xuanhuan is no match for your father. Let's just watch. As he spoke, he also looked ahead with a frown. So this is the consort chosen by the Holy Sun. How ridiculous. She disguised her identity to sneak into Lingxiao College and even caused so much trouble. Was this what Rongxiao? Today, in front of these big shots of the Divine Ruins world, Yuntianke had lost all face. No wonder those people repeatedly when he wanted to go to the Divine Sacrificial Temple, they were not even Estes. He, is suppressing the anger in his heart. Teet twos two. Hout, dissy. Teet, S's outs ofs. Xuanhuan consort must be removed from her position. Jiang Jiwan knew that her father was telling the truth, but for some reason she still felt uneasy. Xuanhuan, she's really full of tricks. She had suffered a crushing defeat in the past few confrontations, so she couldn't help but be wary of Xuanhuan, who knew what other trump cards she had. Moreover, no matter what the outcome was, her Yuan meridian was already broken. From now on she was completely ruined. Jiang Jiwan's eyes were filled with deep despair and resentment when she thought of this. If father could get rid of Xuanhuan while he was at it, that would be for the best. A thought flashed across her mind and she instinctively turned around to look at Rongxiao. That man was sitting in his seat, his handsome and seductive face was calm. It seemed like he didn't seem to care about what was happening in front of him. He's not going to make a move? Jiang Jiwan bit her lips as joy surged in her heart. Of course Rongxiao wouldn't make a move. Xuanhuan was the one who was in the wrong. Is he going to offend everyone here for a woman like her? The crowd was actually very curious about Rongxiao's attitude. Xuanhuan was his consort after all. Xuanhuan was the one who chose her. Even if one were to think with their toes, they would know that Xuanhuan liked her. But now the situation was a little complicated. If Rongxiao acted rashly, some people would be unhappy. Many people secretly exchanged glances. It seems like Rongxiao will still prioritize his and Yuntian Tower's interests after weighing the pros and cons. As for Xuanhuan, Xuanhuan's consort might be important, but she was still dependent on Rongxiao and Yuntian Tower. How could Rongxiao give up Yuntian Tower for Xuanhuan? Xuanhuan's consort might have? The elders of Lingxiao College were also filled with doubts. Rongxiao has always treated Xuanhuan well, and it was obvious that he was deeply in love with her. Why is he standing by and watching? Elder Wanzheng couldn't help but stand up and wanted to help. Xuanhuan is my disciple after all. How could I let others bully her? But before he could take a step forward, Rongxiao looked over. Xuanhuan's thin lips curled into a smile. Elder Wanzheng, please wait for a moment. Elder Wanzheng frowned. Wait. Shang Guanyu is running out of time. Shang Guanyu may have 2 mythical beasts to help her, but Jiang Hetian is much more powerful than her. Elder Wanzheng didn't dare to take the risk. Rong Xiu's smile deepened. Shang Guanyu is still angry. You have to let her vent her anger. Elder Wanzheng was stunned. You, Rong Xiu didn't do anything just to, let's that girl vent her anger? Is he so sure Shang Guanyu will win? Isn't he a little too confident? Elder Wanzheng muttered to himself. He glanced at Rong Xiu and hesitated. Finally he sat back down. After a pause, he said in a muffled voice, Anyway, if my disciple gets hurt, you have to take responsibility. Rong Xiu nodded. Shang Guanyu's expression was dignified, but also arrogant. Of course. Chu Liyue's heart was indeed filled with anger. Ever since she went to the Yuntian Tower, she had inexplicably provoked Jiang Hetian and his daughter. Shang Guanyu's Bailey Jun was also involved. Shang Guanyu didn't think she had done anything wrong to them. Shang Guanyu even let them off because the Immortal Water Mausoleum was Yuntian Tower's #1 unit. Shang Guanyu's parents didn't give up. Shang Guanyu's face was already exposed. Shang Guanyu didn't have to give them face anymore. Shang Guanyu had to get back at them no matter what. Crack. Shang Guanyu's sword fell, and the barrier around Jiang Hetian shattered. Shang Guanyu's sword pointed at Jiang Hetian. Splatter. Shang Guanyu's sharp sword qi reached Jiang Hetian, and a bloody wound appeared between his eyebrows. Digression, Shang Guanyu, Shang Guanyu, Shang Guanyu, Shang Guanyu, 6 p.m. She flipped over and got up. With a thought, a shabby and ancient black shield appeared in front of her. Clang. The shield stood tall. It blocked Chu Liyue's figure completely. When Jiang Hetian saw that black shield, he didn't take it to heart. The corners of his mouth even revealed a sneer full of mockery. At this time, it was too naive to think that a shabby shield could block his attack. However, before the smile on his face could fully spread, another heart-stopping shattering sound came. He hurriedly looked in another direction. Sure enough, on the other side of the god territory, a purple gold light had already transformed into a sharp awl, breaking open a second hole in the god territory. Soon, Jiang Hetian's god territory was attacked from both sides by Dumpling and Zichen's god territory. It collapsed inch by inch. Large patches of black holes appeared in midair. Turbulence roared and space distorted. It was a shocking sight. Without that layer of obstruction, Reddish Heaven's sword immediately changed direction and accelerated at the same time. It went straight for Jiang Hetian's face. Jiang Hetian's heart skipped a beat. Why is this sword chasing after me so closely? What he didn't know was that the venerable artifact had an artifact soul and was very spiritual. The artifact soul was closely connected to Chu Liyue and understood her intentions. As long as she thought about it, she could command it like an arm. Looking at Reddish Heaven's sword that was rapidly approaching him, Jiang Hetian subconsciously wanted to retreat. However, when he moved, he was shocked to realize that he was trapped in the position where the 3 god territories were clashing. He couldn't move at all. This time, to Reddish Heaven's sword, he had become a complete target. The long sword broke through. It pierced through his chest. A line of blood spurted out. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1474. Everything happened too quickly. The reddish gold and purplish gold lights intertwined, dazzling everyone's eyes. Before they could see what had happened, the battle was already over. Bang! Jiang Hetian's legs gave way and he fell to his knees. His eyes were wide open and blood slowly seeped out of the corner of his mouth. There was a bowl-sized hole in his chest and blood was gushing out. The blood was fresh and red and it was still steaming. It dripped onto the layer of ice that had not melted, and it quickly cooled and condensed. This scene was really strange and frightening. Everyone quieted down, unable to believe what they were seeing. Jiang Hetian was a great deity. Shang Guanyu's sword had pierced his heart. She was clearly trying to take his life. Dad! A mournful cry of despair broke the silence. Jiang Jiwan looked at what had happened in front of her in disbelief. Her face was pale and her body was trembling. Shang Guanyu, it was all Shang Guanyu's fault. She rushed forward almost uncontrollably, but after taking a step, her legs gave way and she fell to the ground. If it wasn't for Bailey Chun supporting her, she would have collapsed to the ground. She was already injured, and her heart was filled with grief and resentment. Now that she was angry, she spat out a few mouthfuls of blood and almost fainted. Yuan. Bailey Jun was worried and distressed. This child had been with him for so many years, and she had never suffered or been tired. However, she had been tortured during this period of time. He supported Jiang Jiwan and looked at Chu Luiyue sternly. "Xuanhuan you? How dare you?" Because he was full of anger, his voice was like thunder, and it was so loud that it made people's ears go numb. However, Chu Luiyue didn't even look at him. She slowly got up, and her dark and cold eyes were filled with a shocking murderous intent. Swoosh! Scarlet Heaven sword flew back to her hand. There was not a single trace of blood on the sharp silver blade. She looked at it with satisfaction, then looked at Jiang Hetian. Bang! Jiang Hetian's god domain vanished with a loud rumble. This caused his expression to turn gloomy once again. "You," he opened his mouth, but more blood gushed out. His eyes, which were originally arrogant and full of disdain, were now filled with fear and resentment. Soon he fell to the ground. Several streaks of light flew out from his body, and then condensed into a translucent phantom in midair. It was Jiang Hetian's soul. Seeing this scene, many people's expressions changed slightly. Jiang Hetian doesn't have a divine body? Hasn't he been stuck in the high god realm for many years? Logically speaking, he should have refined his divine body by now. In the past, he was always so arrogant, and I thought that he had already become one. Who knew? He was just pretending to be a wolf. Hasn't he always been like this? In the past few years, he had relied on the Yuntian Tower to do as he pleased. People who don't know him would think that he's the one in charge of the Yuntian Tower. Even if he doesn't have a divine body as a high god, it's really embarrassing to be beaten to such a state by a middle stage rank 9. If I were him, I would be too ashamed to go out in my life. He was able to do as he pleased for so many years because of his thick skin. Of course, I can't compare to him. Many people chuckled softly. Jiang Hetian's status in the Yuntian Tower was considered honorable. Everyone called him Patriarch Jiang. However, in the outside world, in front of the big shots of the divine ruins, he was nothing. In the past, most of them were polite to Jiang Hetian because of Rongxiu. Now, Rongxiu's attitude was very clear. He was clearly on Xuanhuan Yu's side. Then why should they be nice to Jiang Hetian? Unfortunately, Jiang Hetian was about to go crazy at this time, and he did not care about that at all. He only knew that his physical body had been destroyed by Xuanhuan Yu. For a cultivator like him, it would take a lot of effort to reform his physical body. Jiang Hetian's voice was filled with anger and resentment. "Xuanhuan Yu. The Immortal Water Mausoleum is the head of the 28 divisions of the Yuntian Tower. And I am the patriarch of the Jiang family in the Immortal Water Mausoleum. How dare you treat me like this?" Chu Luiyue suddenly laughed. "Patriarch Jiang, you seem to have forgotten my identity." Jiang Hetian choked. Chu Luiyue took a step forward. Her back was straight like a pine tree pressing down on snow. Arrogant. Honorable. She raised her chin slightly and pulled off the mask on her face. A gorgeous face appeared before everyone's eyes. The surroundings suddenly quieted down. She was as bright as the sun and as beautiful as the moon. Her eyebrows were like distant mountains, her nose was tall and straight, and her red lips were slightly raised in a perfect arc. Especially her pair of watery eyes, which were like black jade, rippled with mist and shone with boundless brilliance. In that instant, her entire aura underwent a huge change. The elegant and gentle young man was gone. In his place was a stunningly beautiful and honorable young woman. She clearly didn't do anything, but there was a noble aura in her bones that made people unconsciously look up to her. She smiled and slowly reminded him, "Don't worry. I, Xuanhuan Yu, am the princess of the Yuntian Tower. I am the ruler and you are the subject. Not to mention teaching you a lesson. Even if I personally kill you here today, you can't complain at all. If the ruler wants the subject to die, the subject has no choice but to die. There is no right or wrong here, only nobility and inferiority. You offended your superiors and even tried to take my life. Jiang Hetian. Even if you have 10 lives, it won't be enough to atone for your sins today." Every word was sonorous and Jiang Hetian was speechless. At this moment, Elder Huafeng and the others also saw Chu Luiyue's true appearance. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1475. Hearing this voice, Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat and she turned her head to look. The elders were able to see her face even more clearly. However, after a brief moment of shock and joy, the few of them were a little uncertain. This face. She was indeed 70% to 80% similar to the girl in their impression, especially her eyebrows and expression. They were simply carved from the same mold. Her age didn't seem right. After a few years, that girl should be in her 20s, but the xuanhuan standing in the middle of the square was clearly 17 or 18 years old. Something seems wrong, Elder Hua Feng couldn't help but mutter softly. She's not your, right? Actually, he wasn't sure either. In the past few months, he had become familiar with her. There were a few times when he felt that he saw a familiar shadow on her. However, those thoughts were quickly dispelled by him. Appearance, age, aura. All of these were different. Moreover, if she was really her, why didn't any of them notice this in such a long time? Was it because her acting skills were too good, or were they two different people? Elder Bo Yen was also a little uncertain. He frowned and gripped the armrest of the chair tightly with one hand. After pondering for a moment, he couldn't help but say, she's not. Previously she was on the Azure Cloud roll. If the truth was as they guessed, then her name, Chu Yu, wouldn't have successfully appeared on the Azure Cloud roll at that time. Elder Hua Feng paused. But she's too similar. It wasn't just her appearance, but more importantly, her demeanor and temperament. In all these years, Lingxiao College had never had such a troublesome student. There were only these two. It was hard not to be suspicious. Wan Zheng, what do you think? Elder Bo Yen asked in a low voice. As their master, he should know more than them, right? Elder Wan Zheng didn't speak for a long time. He only stared at Chu Luiyue. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind in a chaotic and noisy manner. However, when he tried to think about it carefully, he found that it was a complete blank. Too many things had happened today, and now he was completely stunned. Wan Zheng. Elder Bo Yen called out to him uneasily. Elder Wan Zheng's lips quivered. Finally, he opened his mouth with difficulty. If she really is, then is she still my disciple? At that time, you had acknowledged the dean as her master. Elder Bo Yen and the rest did not expect him to still be thinking about this at this time and were speechless. A moment later, Elder Hua Feng patted him on the shoulder. Let's leave it to the heavens. Chu Luiyue could vaguely hear their conversation. For a moment he felt helpless and amused. She knew what they were looking at and what they were guessing. Seeing this face that was so similar to the one from before, this was inevitable. It was better to wait until everything was over before explaining to them. Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue looked at Jianghu again. At this time Jianghu was furious. He had never expected that he would come here today to expose Xuanhuan in front of everyone and ruthlessly trample on her. It would be best if he could take this opportunity to pull her down from the position of princess consort. How many people would she offend by disguising her identity and deceiving everyone? However, he never expected that Xuanhuan was not a pushover. Not only did she not feel the slightest bit of guilt or embarrassment from having her identity exposed, she became even bolder and directly fought with him. She even threatened to kill him. Where did her confidence come from? Jianghu was so angry that he laughed and turned to look at Rongxiu. Your Highness, you have seen the current situation. Don't you have anything to say? He did not believe that Rongxiu would abandon the entire immortal water mausoleum for Xuanhuan. Rongxiu rubbed his chin and pondered for a moment before saying, Princess Consort tried to murder Princess Consort. You plotted to murder the Princess Consort. You should be beheaded. His voice was low and lazy, like the wind sweeping the strings of a zither, elegant and elegant. However, every word that came out of his mouth was like the sharpest blade, terrifyingly cold. His biting cold killing intent spread without any concealment. The surrounding air froze inch by inch. All the noise disappeared in an instant. The scene froze. Everyone looked at Rongxiu with shock and disbelief. Beheaded? Did Rongxiu just say those two words? Jianghu was also stunned. He wanted to threaten Rongxiu with the immortal water mausoleum, but he did not expect that Rongxiu would side with Xuanhuan without hesitation. He even said that he wanted to kill him. He was the holy son of Yintian Tower. Every sentence, every word, was a golden rule that could not be disobeyed. He said he wanted to kill him. Holy son. Jianghu suddenly raised his voice. It was piercing to the ears. Are you really going to abandon the immortal water mausoleum? The immortal water mausoleum was the leader of the 28 tribes. If Rongxiu broke ties with him, the immortal water mausoleum would be in chaos. In the end, the one who would bear the loss would still be Yintian Tower. How could Rongxiu not understand this? However, when Rongxiu heard this, the corners of his lips suddenly curled up. He raised his eyebrows and looked at Jianghu. Patriarch Jiang, I should be the one asking you this. From the moment you colluded with the enemy, tried to murder the princess, and even tried to take control of the Yintian Tower, you should have expected this day. Jianghu felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. What did you say? He suddenly felt guilty and even his voice was trembling. As he stood there, he exuded an oppressive aura. Instantly, he created an extremely strong pressure. Come here. He waved at Chu Luyue. Chu Luyue walked toward him. Rong Xiu carefully wiped away a drop of blood that had accidentally splattered on her cheek. His fingertips were warm and his movements were restrained and gentle. However, there was an indescribable majesty and dominance. Everyone was stunned. Who had ever seen the holy son of Yuntian Tower, who killed without hesitation, treat someone so gently and carefully? Then he looked at Jiang Jiwan. His eyes were extremely calm. I will give you and your father 15 minutes to say your final goodbyes and decide who will die first. Digression, today is over. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1476. It was a simple and concise sentence. But it had already decided the life and death of these two people. Dead silence. After a moment, Jiang Jiwan murmured in disbelief. Your Highness? What did you say? Rong Xiu lifted his eyelids slightly, his eyes filled with a biting cold murderous intent. What, your ears are not working now? Jiang Jiwan's face was pale. Her body was on the verge of collapse and her knees gave way. She actually almost fainted. Bailey Jun immediately shouted. Saint, isn't this decision of yours a little too hasty? Even if you don't care about the lives of the father and daughter, you should at least think about the immortal water tomb? If Jiang Hetian doesn't care about it himself, then why should I waste my effort? Rong Xiu's expression was indifferent as he interrupted Bailey Jun. Bailey Jun choked. Recalling Rong Xiu's words, a trace of uneasiness gradually surged in his heart. What did this mean? Patriarch, you just came out of seclusion, so there are some things that you don't know. I will explain it to you today so that they can all die with a clear understanding. As Rong Xiu spoke, he smiled slightly and looked at Jiang Hetian. A formless pressure pressed down on him. Jiang Hetian met that pair of deep, seemingly bottomless phoenix eyes. He felt as if his entire body had been stripped bare and seen through. Jiang Hetian, as the patriarch of the Jiang family in the immortal water tomb, you should be loyal to the Yuntian Tower. However, your heart is not right, and you colluded with outsiders to murder the princess consort. The evidence is conclusive. In the past, I was extremely tolerant of your Jiang family in the immortal water tomb on account of your many years of service to the Yuntian Tower and gave you many privileges. But now you have committed many crimes, and the Yuntian Tower will definitely not tolerate such rebellious people. Jiang Hetian was guilty, but he did not give up. Rong Xiu had probably wanted to get rid of them for a long time. Today's words were high-sounding, but they were actually all excuses. He gritted his teeth. Since your Highness says that the evidence is conclusive, please show it to us. I, Jiang Hetian, have never done anything wrong to the Yuntian Tower. Just as he was about to refute, he saw Rong Xiu suddenly take out a letter. When he saw the familiar envelope, Jiang Hetian's heart skipped a beat and his voice stopped abruptly. Rong Xiu picked up the letter and smiled faintly. Jiang Hetian, do you recognize this letter? Jiang Hetian looked away. I don't know. I've never seen this letter before. You haven't even opened it to look at the content. How do you know that you've never seen it before? Cold sweat broke out on Jiang Hetian's forehead with a swish sound. I just felt that this envelope was very unfamiliar, so I've never seen it before. Rong Xiu's lips curled up slightly. He opened the letter and took out the letter. It was a thin, yellowish and somewhat rough piece of paper. When the sun shone down, it faintly reflected a golden light. The black handwriting on it was like flowing water, full and moving. If you don't recognize the envelope, then you should recognize the immortal grass xian paper unique to the Tomb of Immortal Water, right? Immortal grass xian paper was paper made from immortal grass. It was famous for its superior quality and its ability to be preserved for thousands of years without spoiling. This type of immortal grass could only be found in very few places. The Tomb of Immortal Water was one of those places that was rich in immortal grass. This was also one of their great advantages. Under normal circumstances, ordinary people were not qualified to possess immortal grass xian paper. Even in the Tomb of Immortal Water, only the direct descendants of the Jiang family could use it. Jiang Hetian was, of course, within this category. Immortal grass xian paper is given out as a gift every year. This piece of paper doesn't mean anything. Jiang Hetian was still defending himself, but his voice was weak and his face was pale. Anyone could see that there was a problem. Rong Xiu smiled faintly. Yes. Of course, a piece of immortal grass xian paper doesn't mean anything. The point is, the words on it are your own handwriting, Patriarch Jiang. Impossible. Jiang Hetian seemed to have been hit on a sore spot and suddenly began to object fiercely. This is impossible. Actually, when he saw the envelope, he recognized it as his reply to Tan Taichen. But how did this thing end up in Rong Xiu's hands? When he heard Rong Xiu say this, his first reaction was to deny it. He was very careful when he replied to the letter and put a lot of thought into it. The handwriting on this immortal grass shen paper would disappear after reading it. Even if someone got hold of this letter, the contents would not be noticed. Rong Xiu said that there was his handwriting on it. It was most likely fake. As if guessing what he was thinking, Rong Xiu waved his wrist and the piece of paper flew to Jiang Hetian. Look carefully. Which word on it wasn't written by you? Jiang Hetian didn't believe in heresy at first, but when he saw the intact letter, he immediately felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Line by line, word by word, he could see it clearly. This was indeed his reply to Tan Taichen. And it was intact. In this letter, you said that Yuntian Tower has already disregarded your life and death, so there's no need to hesitate. Today you will personally come here and pull you down from the position of princess consort in front of everyone. If there's a chance, you'll get rid of her. In addition, you also said that if you doesn't admit her identity, you'll ask the other party to come forward and prove it. You've really put in a lot of effort. Rong Xiu did not speak quickly, and his voice was calm and casual as if he was telling a story. However, every word he uttered was like a heavy hammer that pounded on Jiang Hetian's heart. He was utterly defeated. Jiang Hetian's heart was in a mess and his whole mind was in a mess. He didn't know how things had developed to this point. This letter should be in Tan Taichen's hands. Moreover, after he read it, the handwriting on it should have long disappeared without a trace. How could it still be so intact? The most important thing was that this letter was taken out by Rong Xiu. What went wrong? Suddenly Jiang Hetian's heart sank. If this letter fell into Rong Xiu's hands, then Tan Taichen. If you don't admit it, I can also ask this person to come over and confront you face to face. As Rong Xiu spoke, he raised his eyebrows and smiled faintly. However, I'm not sure if he's still alive to hold on until now. Every word was as light as the clouds and wind, but it was as sharp as a knife and as cold as ice. Jiang Hetian didn't doubt Rong Xiu's words at all. If he said that the person was in his hands, then it must be. Otherwise, this letter wouldn't have fallen into his hands. I and the princess are husband and wife. Your intention to murder her is tantamount to treason. You father and daughter are in cahoots. You should have been executed long ago. What's there to explain? As Rong Xiu spoke, he took back the letter. Immediately, he raised his other hand and golden flames danced on his slender and fair fingertips. Half a quarter of an hour is up. Since you can't come to a conclusion, I will make the decision for you. The golden flames flew out. Soon after, it transformed into a huge cage trapping Jiang Hetian within it. As the flames burned, his translucent body began to distort. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1477. Jiang Hetian let out a blood-curdling scream. Rong Xiu had two divine bodies, and his strength was much higher than Jiang Hetian's. It was a piece of cake for him to deal with the half-crippled Jiang Hetian. Intense pain engulfed him. The burning of the soul was more painful than the destruction of the body. Jiang Hetian struggled frantically, trying to escape. But no matter how hard he tried, he could not break free from Rong Xiu's control. In the end, he was at the mercy of Rong Xiu. His soul gradually weakened and became transparent under the burning of the golden flames. His originally arrogant and unbridled face was now only filled with pain and despair. It hurts. It hurts too much. He had lived for so many years, but he had never suffered such terrible pain. Seeing his twisted face and body, and his gradually weakening breath, Jiang Jiwan was so angry that she spat out a few more mouthfuls of blood. She cried as she knelt in front of Rong Xiu. Your Highness, please let father go. There must be some kind of misunderstanding here. For so many years, the Immortal Water Mausoleum has been loyal to you and Yuntian Tower. How could father do such a thing? There must be a mistake. She wailed and kept kowtowing. If Bailey June had not pulled her back in time, she would have fainted. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. Are you questioning I? Jiang Jiwan's heart skipped a beat. No, that's not what I meant. The evidence is right here and the witness is in I's hands. I was thinking that if Jiang Hetian did not come today, I would give him one last chance. Unfortunately. How could he blame others for his own death? If you have time, cry for yourself. Rong Xiu said lightly. That one sentence completely pierced Jiang Jiwan's heart. The last trace of blood drained from her face, and her lips trembled violently. Gradually, her entire body began to tremble uncontrollably. She only thought that her father was going to die, but she forgot that she would be next. Her tears seemed to have dried up. "Your Highness, you and I were childhood friends. Do you really not care about us at all?" She knelt on the ground and looked at Wuxiao in despair. Her tears flowed down, leaving 2 streaks of tears on her messy, blood-stained face. She looked particularly pathetic. There had never been a moment when she clearly understood that Wuxiao really didn't have her in his heart, and he hated her to the core. In her blurred vision, that man's figure was so real, yet so illusory. He was tall and straight, handsome like a demon and immortal. If he loved someone, he would do everything in the world just to please her. Not afraid of wind and rain or dust. If he did not love a person, he would not even a glances. Cold-hearted and ruthless. She had adored and followed this man for many years, but in the end she had become a joke. What affection? Well, affection. He did not even hesitate to take her and her father's lives. Jiang Jiwan's heart felt like it was on fire. After the burning pain, it gradually withered and curled up. The blood in her body began to turn cold. When Wuxiao heard this, he seemed to have heard a ridiculous joke. He tilted his head, pondered for a moment, and asked in return, "You have indeed stayed in the Divine Ruins world for many years, but I have not seen you more than 10 times. So, can we be considered childhood friends?" These simple words were like 2 tight slaps to Jiang Jiwan's face. She opened her mouth, but her eyes rolled back and she fainted. Xuanhuan. Bailey Jun was extremely anxious. He had been cursing in his heart before, and the celestial physician he had notified had not come yet. But now he could not care less about this. Wuxiao wanted her life. "Holy Son, have you considered the consequences of doing this?" Bailey Jun said anxiously. "If the Mausoleum of Immortal Water finds out about Jiang Hetian's death, they will not let this go. You, Patriarch, you can rest assured about this." Wuxiao interrupted him. The corners of his lips curled slightly, and there was a hint of nonchalance. Right now, the people of the Mausoleum of Immortal Water should be busy preparing for the ascension ceremony of the new Patriarch. They have no time to care about this. However, I have already informed them. After this matter is over, they will send someone to bring the bones back. They are from the Jiang family after all. They will not just sit by and do nothing. However, Jiang Hetian's actions this time have let down the Jiang family's ancestors. He should not be buried in the ancestral grave. They would probably bring the bones back and find a random place to bury them. Bailey Chun was stunned when he heard that. Wuxiao had been prepared for this? He had helped the other members of the Jiang family ascend the throne? In an instant, countless things were connected and finally formed a complete chain. Bailey Jun came to a realization. Wuxiao clearly knew about Jiang Hetian's contact with outsiders and found a way to intercept the most recent letter. On the surface, he had been staying in the academy and ignoring everything. But in reality, he had been waiting to catch a turtle in a jar. However, Jiang Hetian did not notice this at all and even ran over excitedly. In the end, not only did he fail to drag Xuanhuan down with him, but he also landed himself in a hopeless situation. On the surface, the Jiang family seemed to be ruled by Jiang Hetian, but in reality that was not the case. All these years, there had been people who were eager to take over the Jiang family. It was only because Jiang Hetian had been suppressing them that they did not dare to act rashly. Now these people were obviously looking for Wuxiao. Wuxiao had just openly punished Jiang Hetian, and now they could cause trouble in the Jiang family and directly take over the position of Patriarch. For various reasons, these people were bound to be loyal to Wuxiao. In this way, Wuxiao could effortlessly make the Immortal Water Mausoleum his power. To him, Jiang Hetian was a malignant tumor who supported him in everything he did. But from today onwards, this problem no longer existed. Bailey Jun was shocked and stood rooted to the spot for a long time. Wuxiao, what a ruthless method. What a deep plan. At this time, Jiang Hetian, who still had a little bit of strength left, also heard these words. This was the last straw that defeated him. His spirit was scattered and he no longer had the will to fight. Soon he was completely swallowed by the golden flames. He hated. In the end, he could only die with hatred and resentment. The sound of struggling finally dissipated. The golden flames engulfed everything. Jiang Hetian died just like that. There was dead silence. Everyone's expression was complicated, and they did not know what to say. Actually, they more or less knew about the conflict between the Yuntian Tower and the Immortal Water Mausoleum. Relying on the strength of the Immortal Water Mausoleum, Jiang Hetian had been tyrannical all these years. He was even somewhat famous in the Divine Ruins world. Sometimes, people would be more polite to him for the sake of the Yuntian Tower. They knew that with Rongxiu's personality he would not tolerate it forever. After all, Rongxiu had personally led people to kill the family that wanted to rebel. But today's situation was still beyond their expectations. Jiang Hetian was dead. Next was Jiang Jiwan. Countless pairs of eyes fell on Jiang Jiwan, including Rongxiu. Bailey Jun shielded Jiang Jiwan behind him and shouted, "Son of God! You can't kill her." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1478. Many people exchanged glances in private. What was Bailey Jun thinking? Rongxiu had already made it clear that he wanted to send both father and daughter to heaven. Now he was jumping out to stop him? Was it worth it to confront and even fall out with Rongxiu over Jiang Jiwan? Jiang Hetian was already dead. What was there to save Jiang Jiwan? Family head, you saw everything that happened just now. Jiang Jiwan deserves death. Moreover, as the son of Yuntian Tower, I can't even kill a sinner? However, Rongxiu seemed to have expected this. He wasn't shocked or angry as he questioned her with a calm expression. Bailey Jun's lips moved. Jiang Hetian was the one who committed the crime. He was also the one who wanted to kill Xuanhuan. Xuanhuan had only fought with her twice in total. Xuanhuan was not injured at all. Xuanhuan, on the other hand, was defeated and seriously injured. Her life is in danger. Anyway, Jiang Hetian is dead now. According to what you said, the Jiang family has a new head. Xuanhuan's status as the eldest daughter of the Jiang family is no longer the same as before. Her Yuan meridian is broken and she has lost her father. She is already in a desperate situation. Even so, you still won't let her go? Bailey Jun became angrier as he spoke. In the end, his tone was almost stern. Rongxiu, on the other hand, remained calm. After Bailey Jun finished speaking, he smiled and said, "Is that all you wanted to say?" Bailey Jun choked and waved his sleeve. Rongxiu nodded slightly. "Since you're done, I will also say a few words. Jiang Jiwan is well aware of everything that Jiang Hetian has done. She is not innocent. Otherwise, she wouldn't have taken the initiative to propose those 2 matches and used a killing move right from the start. She lost to you because her skills were not as good and she was too weak. How did it become an excuse for her? As for her status as the eldest daughter of the Jiang family, she should have known that this day would come when she wanted to kill you. Moreover, she seemed to have always regarded herself as the eldest daughter of the Yuntian Tower, right? As for her status as the eldest daughter of the Jiang family, she did not care for it. Even if she was not the eldest daughter of the Jiang family, she would not feel bad. She should be punished for her wrongdoings. You want me to pity her? Why don't you think about how much you would have to endure if she had to face the encirclement of so many of you? If he wanted him to let go of Jiang Ziyuan, who would let go of his Rongxiu's tone was calm, but it had a hint of murderous intent. Chu Liyue's heart seemed to have been hit by something. Amidst the softness, a sweet scent spread. She tilted her head and looked at Rongxiu. The contours of his face were smooth and perfect. His jade-like chin was slightly tense, and his deep eyes were filled with anger. He was angry for her. He felt injustice for her. Chu Liyue exhaled softly. In an instant, it seemed that all the anger and resentment had quietly dissipated. No matter what, this man would always stand by her side, shelter her from the wind and rain and protect her. That was enough. She took a step forward, walked to Rongxiu's side and held his hand. When their fingertips touched, Rongxiu immediately held her hand. Their fingers passed through the gaps of her fingers, and after a careful caress, they held each other tightly. His hand was dry and warm, and the warmth seemed to spread to the bottom of her heart in an instant. Chu Liyue's heart calmed down instantly. Bailey Jun was speechless. Looking at the intimate way their fingers were intertwined, he finally realized how important this woman was in Rongxiu's heart. He loved this woman so much. It was to the point that she was even more important than himself. Not to mention Jiang Jiwan, even if it were any other woman in the world, they would not be able to compete for the position of the princess consort. If it were in the past, Bailey Jun might have been able to use some coercive means to force Rongxiu to submit. But now, it was obviously impossible. Rongxiu had killed Jiang Hetian in front of him on purpose. This was his warning. Bailey Jun was extremely sullen. After a few years of seclusion, the world had changed greatly. Rongxiu had long been out of his control. Now the only thing he could do was to protect Jiang Jiwan. Xuanhuan has done something wrong. You can punish her, but you can't kill her. This old man will never agree to this. Bailey Jun's attitude was still firm. Chu Liyue narrowed his eyes, and a trace of doubt flashed through his mind. Bailey Jun was too concerned about Jiang Jiwan, wasn't he? He was even willing to turn against Rong Xiu for her? Rong Xiu's intention to kill Jiang Jiwan was already so clear, but he still acted like this. Even if Jiang Jiwan was raised by him in front of this kind of thing, there seemed to be nothing to fight over, right? Unless he had a reason not to abandon Jiang Jiwan. As the noble patriarch of the Yuntian Tower, he had seen many storms and waves. What could make him like this? A vague guess appeared in his mind. Chu Luiyue frowned. Rong Xiu had already spoken. If you don't want me to kill her, you should at least give me a reason, right? Bailey Jun's face was ashen. There is no reason. No means no. This old man is the patriarch. Now, I don't even have the right to spare a person's life? This was a little overbearing and unreasonable. Rong Xiu was not in a hurry. Instead, his thin lips curled up slightly. He turned his head to look at Chu Luiyue and smiled warmly. Do you know that in the Yuntian Tower, there are only two ways for a person to escape death after committing a capital crime? Chu Luiyue showed a curious expression. Which two? Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. The first way is that this person has once made a great contribution to the Yuntian Tower, so the merit can make up for the crime. The other way. He paused. This person has the direct bloodline of the Yuntian Tower, so he can be spared from death. Digression. The article continues at 6 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1479. Rong Xiu looked at Bailey Jun and smiled casually. Patriarch, even if you have a high status, the rules of the Yuntian Tower were set by our ancestors. You can't just go against them. What do you think? As long as Jiang Jiwan fulfills one of these two conditions, I can spare her from death. Everyone's expression became strange. Of course, Rong Xiu's sudden words were not without reason. How old was Jiang Jiwan now? At most, she was a spoiled young lady. She might have had some talent, but of course it was gone now. Such a person did not look like someone who had made great contributions to the Yuntian Tower, right? Then, there was only the second possibility. Although the Immortal Water Tomb was one of the 28 divisions of the Yuntian Tower, they were not related by blood. Jiang Jiwan was the young lady of the Jiang family. How could she have the direct bloodline of the Yuntian Tower? Bailey Jun was shocked and angry. He stared at Rong Xiu, trying to find some clues from his face. Did he already know something? That shouldn't be. Those things had been covered in dust for many years. Those who knew about it were no longer alive. How could Rong Xiu? But Bailey Jun was not sure. Based on Rong Xiu's character, he definitely wouldn't say something like that unless he had concrete evidence. But how could he admit it? Bailey Jun's chest felt like it was blocked by something. He could not breathe. If that's the case, doesn't that mean young Lady Jiang doesn't fit the bill? Chu Luiyue said softly. He looked regretfully at the unconscious Jiang Jiwan. I heard that young Lady Jiang was only 22 or 23 years old. She used to be a genius. It's a pity that she fell like this. Bailey Jun was so angry that his face turned red. What a hypocrite. These people probably couldn't wait for Jiang Jiwan to die quickly. Previously he had used all sorts of methods to coerce her, but now he was acting so hypocritical. It was truly disgusting. Rong Xiu looked indifferent. Her biological mother passed away when she was young. Now that Jiang Hetian is also dead, she is the only one left. Coupled with the fact that her Yuan meridian is broken, her reputation is in tatters. In this situation, death was probably the only way for Jiang Jiwan to escape. However, these words were like a thorn that pierced into Bailey Chun's heart. Rong Xiu said, Clan leader, I know that you have loved Jiang Jiwan very much for many years. Why don't you leave us for a while? As he spoke, he suddenly took a step forward. This step was like stepping on Bailey Jun's sore spot. The last string in his mind suddenly snapped. Xuanhuan is this old man's granddaughter. Who dares to touch her? As soon as he finished speaking, there was dead silence. Although many people had already guessed this, hearing Bailey Jun admit it with their own ears was still very shocking. All that was left was a lonely little girl who was still in swaddling clothes. Of course, he couldn't bring his daughter back to the Yuntian Tower. So he passed through several places and sent her to a family. For several years he secretly took care of her. Because he knew that she was his only child, he doted on this daughter very much. Later he even tried to arrange for her to marry into the Jiang family. Then she gave birth to Jiang Jiwan. Unfortunately, she suffered a lot of bleeding during the birth and died a few years later. How could Bailey Jun not feel sorry for his granddaughter? So, at that time he finally decided to take Jiang Ji1 to the Yintian Tower and let her grow up by his side, regardless of the various private criticisms. Her food and clothing were all according to the standards of a young lady of the Yintian Tower. At first, everyone felt that it was very inappropriate, but seeing that his attitude was firm, they didn't say anything. They just thought that he didn't have a child and was deeply lonely. Perhaps he was so persistent because he was fated to be with Jiang Ji1. As time passed, everyone got used to it and didn't say much. When Jiang Ji1 heard this, she was a little confused for a moment. However, she quickly grasped the main point. She was Bailey Jun's biological granddaughter. She was the real young lady of the Yintian Tower. She didn't have to die. Moreover, she could live well in the future. Her identity was even more noble than before, wasn't it? Jiang Ji1 was so emotional that tears flowed down her cheeks as she clutched Bailey Jun's sleeve tightly. "Grandpa, I see." Rongxiao stood at the side and smiled. "In that case, let's begin the test. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 1480. Jiang Ji1's tears suddenly stopped. She looked at Rongxiao in astonishment. "Test? What test?" Bailey Chun also furrowed his brows, seemingly very displeased. "Holy Son, are you still doubting Xuanhuan's identity?" He had just admitted with his own mouth that Jiang Ziyuan was his biological granddaughter. Saying this in front of so many people had already made him lose all his face. If it was not true, why did he have to do this? Rongxiao smiled. "Patriarch, don't misunderstand. I was just following the rules. After all, this matter concerns the legitimate bloodline of the Yintian Tower. Naturally, I have to be careful. After all, only by confirming her bloodline can we let her acknowledge her ancestors openly, isn't that right?" Jiang Ji1 had to face not only his interrogation, but also the entire Yintian Tower. Of course, a few words would not be enough to convince them. Bailey Jun's anger lessened a little. After pondering for a while, he finally nodded. "Xuanhuan is seriously injured and her body is weak now. Be careful." Rongxiao raised his eyebrows. "It's just a blood test. It's very simple. You don't have to worry." Bailey Jun did not reply. Instead, he looked at Jiang Ji1 and gently patted her hand. "Xuanhuan, bear with it for a while. We'll go back later." In the past, he could only bury this matter deep in his heart to save face. But now, in order to protect Jiang Ji1, he had to do this. No matter what others would say, he did not care anymore. Jiang Ji1 was touched. She would never have thought that she was hiding such a secret on her body. The legitimate daughter of the Yintian Tower, even if she couldn't take the position of princess consort, with this identity, she wouldn't be bullied in the future. "Grandfather, you're so good to me." Bailey Chun was satisfied when he heard that and smiled. "Your grandpa's only relative. Who else should I treat well?" Chu Liwei watched from the side with a slight smile. This pair of grandfather and grandson recognized each other really quickly. Especially Jiang Ji1, her mental fortitude was really good. She had just witnessed her father's tragic death, and now she was affectionately calling Bailey Jun grandfather. It seemed that she was really happy. That was why she could smile so brightly from a short distance away before her father's body was completely cold. However, when he thought about it carefully, it made sense. In a hopeless situation, there was always a silver lining. Anyone would be overjoyed, right? "Patriarch, please step aside," Rongxiao said. Bailey Jun took a few steps back. Jiang Ji1 plucked up her courage and looked up at Rongxiao. However, there was no longer any fear and cowardice in his eyes. So what if she was no longer the eldest young lady of the Jiang family? From now on, she was the direct descendant of the Yintian Tower. Jiang Ji1 instantly felt much more confident, and the pain in her body seemed to have lessened a lot. "Your Highness." Rongxiao closed his eyes and raised one hand. A golden stream of light flew out from his palm and quickly condensed in midair. Then, a palm-sized grayish-white round stone dial appeared in front of him. The golden flames burned on top of it and finally converged in the middle to form an incomparably exquisite pointer. Chu Liwei watched from the side and was a little surprised. This small stone dial looked very similar to the infinite divine dial that she saw that day. There were also 12 numbers and a pointer on it. Was this something to test the bloodline of the Yintian Tower? As if sensing her gaze, Rongxiao slowly opened his eyes and looked at her with a smile. He patiently explained. "This is the infinite divine dial's child dial. It's used to test the purity of the bloodline of the Yintian Tower. The higher the number, the purer the bloodline. The purer the bloodline, the higher the status in the clan." Chu Liwei nodded. It was indeed related to the infinite divine dial. It was just that the infinite divine dial could test the bloodline power of everyone, but this child dial was used to test the bloodline of the Yuntian Tower. Rongxiu pushed his palm forward, and the child dial slowly flew forward and finally stopped in front of Jiang Jiwan. Just put your hand on it. This thing did not require the use of force. As long as one touched it with blood, the result would be quickly obtained. Jiang Jiwan's hand was covered in messy bloodstains. She could just put her hand on it directly, which saved her a lot of trouble. Jiang Jiwan stared at the child dial. For a moment she was nervous and excited. She had seen this child dial before, but she had never thought that she would have a day like this. She held her breath and carefully placed her hand on it. Buzz. The moment she touched it, the child dial let out a buzzing sound. Jiang Jiwan's heart felt as if it was being squeezed tightly by something. She stared at it without blinking. The descendants of the Yuntian Tower's bloodline usually had a score of 6 or 7. Those who were slightly more outstanding could reach 8. If they could reach 9, their status and treatment in the clan would be extraordinary. She did not know how many points she could reach. Bailey June was also watching. Although the talent of the woman who was with him back then was average, his bloodline power was rich, so it should not affect him much. Moreover, judging from Jiang Jiwan's outstanding talent in the past, she should be able to reach 8 at the very least. However, as time passed slowly, the golden needle on the child dial did not move. Jiang Jiwan was a little confused. She looked at Bailey June and felt a little uneasy. Bailey June said, "Xuanhuan, try using your other hand." Jiang Jiwan did as she was told. However, this time, the needle on the child dial stayed at its initial position. How could this be? Bailey June raised his foot and was about to step forward. "There's something wrong with the child dial." Jiang Jiwan gritted her teeth and placed both hands on the child dial. She did not believe that she could not trigger the child dial. Bang! When Jiang Jiwan's hands were about to reach out, the child dial suddenly retreated. The golden needle shattered into pieces with a bang. A stream of light flashed and the child dial flew back to Rongxiu. Rongxiu glanced at her from the side and seemed to be smiling. The child dial's needle broke on its own, which means that it has touched the bloodline of another clan. Clan leader Jiang Jiwan doesn't seem to be of the Yuntian Tower bloodline. Are you mistaken? Who knows where this Jiang Jiwan came from? Bailey June's expression changed drastically. Digression. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock, mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1481. Impossible. There must be something wrong with this. Due to his agitation, Bailey June's voice became a little sharp and ear-piercing. His old face was filled with shock and anger. Test again. Rongxiu smiled, but his eyes were cold and resolute. Patriarch, you know that Zigui won't make a mistake, so why do you have to do this? Jiang Jiwan does not have the slightest bit of Yuntian Tower's bloodline. Every word was like a sharp knife, ruthlessly stabbing into Bailey June's heart. His footsteps faltered, his vision turned black and his body turned cold. How could this be? How is this possible? When Jiang Jiwan was born, he had sent someone to guard her, so there was no mistake about her identity. Then, there must be something wrong with my daughter? I was the one who carried that child back then. And I calculated the time at that time, so it should be my child. Could it be? A terrifying and absurd conjecture appeared in Bailey June's mind, causing his heart to beat violently and his blood to boil, almost bursting. He panted heavily, pressing his chest with one hand, and his mind was in a mess. The surroundings were silent. Many people came back to their senses and secretly exchanged glances, their expressions strange and forbearing. What a huge cuckold. What an exciting show. The biological granddaughter, Jiang Jiwan, whom Bailey June had been taking care of, had nothing to do with him. For so many years I raised someone else's child, but I didn't even know it. What a joke. They thought that the most shocking news of the day was that he revealed that Jiang Jiwan was his granddaughter, but they never expected such a huge reversal. And in front of so many people. It's a slap in the face. How exciting. From now on, Bailey June will probably become the laughing stock of the entire Divine Ruins. No one said anything, but their gazes fell on Bailey June. The meaning was unclear, complicated and chaotic. The sarcasm and ridicule were blatant. The air seemed to have frozen. Bailey June felt as if there was an invisible force pressing down on him, almost sealing him in this sealed space. His face was burning, but his entire body was cold to the bone. Jiang Jiwan was also stunned by Rongxiu's words. She was not a direct descendant of the Yuntian Tower? But didn't the clan leader just say that she was his biological granddaughter? What was going on? Sensing that something was wrong, Jianghu felt a strong sense of uneasiness. She opened her mouth and looked at Bailey June for help. Grandfather. These two words instantly triggered Bailey June's sensitive nerves. Don't call me. Bailey June abruptly turned around and bellowed. Jianghu was shocked. Her body trembled and tears fell unconsciously. Clan leader, I. In her memory, the clan leader had never spoken to her with such a terrifying expression and tone. But what did she do wrong? He was the one who said that he was her grandfather. All these years, how well he had treated Jianghu, how deeply he cared for her, was how painful it was now. How embarrassing it was. Seeing that Bailey June's expression was not right, Jianghu was a little afraid. However, she was more afraid of death. Therefore, she hesitated for a moment and reached out to Bailey June. Grandpa Chun, please help Xuanhuan. At this moment she was seriously injured and didn't even have the strength to stand up on her own. Bailey June was a few steps away from her. Even if she stretched out her hand, she wouldn't be able to reach Bailey June. However, this action was extremely disgusting in Bailey June's eyes. His eyelids twitched violently and he waved his hand almost reflexively. Get lost. What kind of wild thing was this? She had deceived him for so many years and now she had the audacity to ask for help? Bang. This time he was wrapped in anger and full of strength. In an instant, Jianghu was sent flying and fell heavily to the ground. Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood and her breathing was weak. She tried to straighten up with difficulty, but she couldn't get up no matter how hard she tried. She could only lie on the ground in a sorry state like an ant. She stared at Bailey June, and layers of despair surged in her eyes. Finally, the corner of her mouth slowly pulled into an extremely sarcastic smile, but it was also bleak and self-deprecating. Her cry was nothing more than a joke. The next moment, before her smile could fully relax, her head tilted and she kowtowed to the ground. There was no sound. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1482. Jianghu had been injured ever since she left the wilderness. Although she had been recuperating in the Yuntian Tower, she had yet to fully recover. This time, in order to compete with Chu Luiyue, she had even consumed a bewildering fragrance pill without thinking about the consequences. This had caused her Yuan meridian to rupture and severely damaged her body. She was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Bailey June's final attack had become the straw that broke the camel's back. Bailey June had not intended to kill her, but his attack was too strong. Jianghu could not withstand it. The crowd quieted down. They were all speechless as they watched the scene unfold. Jianghu was lying on the ground. Her body was stained with blood. Her head was tilted upwards at a strange angle. She could no longer move her body. This was the only way she could see Bailey June. Her eyes were bulging. Her gaze was unfocused. Her face was covered in blood and wounds. One could even see the bulging veins on her forehead and neck. Even though she was dead, one could still see how desperate and hysterical she had been before she died. However, at that time she no longer had any strength to resist or struggle. She died with her eyes wide open. After a brief moment of silence, low voices of discussion quietly spread. Tsk, he really is ruthless. He took Jianghu's life just like that. After all, he had brought her by his side for several years and raised her personally. He really doesn't show any mercy. I don't know where this bastard came from. Why should he show mercy? I think Bailey Chun clearly did it on purpose this time. That's true. If I were him, I would be too ashamed to show my face in the future. It's embarrassing enough to have an illegitimate daughter. In the end, she's not even his. This joke is enough to make me laugh for a year. Ah. Shh. Lower your voice. Bailey June heard it. Didn't you see his expression change? So what? He did this, so why can't others talk about it? Do you think he can come over and seal our mouths? Moreover, this matter would spread throughout the entire Divine Ruins world in a few days. There are so many people and so many mouths. Can he stop them all? Most of the people present had extraordinary statuses. Although they were polite to Bailey June, it did not mean that they were afraid of him. Especially now that the power of the Yuntian Tower was in the hands of Rongxiu, Bailey June had nothing to do with it. It had been so long and he couldn't even get a celestial physician to come over. This was already very telling. Coupled with Jianghu's blood test, Bailey June's reputation was completely lost. Bailey June clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. The veins on his forehead bulged and his wrinkled face trembled slightly. It was obvious that he was on the verge of exploding. He glanced at Jiang Jiwan, then turned around and left without hesitation. If he looked at Jiang Jiwan's face again, he would only think of those humiliating things. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows when he saw this. Patriarch, are you leaving? Bailey Jun stopped in his tracks. I still have important matters to attend to in the clan, so I'll take my leave. His voice was hoarse as if he was suppressing something. Rong Xiu raised his chin. Then Jiang Jiwan's body, just deal with it with her father. Bailey Jun's tone suddenly became impatient, and his footsteps quickened as he left quickly. It seemed that mentioning Jiang Jiwan's name would dirty his mouth. Rong Xiu remained calm and nodded with a smile. Okay. Have a safe trip. Bailey Jun did not even know how to speak. In a flash he disappeared on the spot. Bailey Jun was gone, and the Jiang family father and daughter were dead. However, to everyone today's incident was something that they would remember for a long time. Yuntian Tower's patriarch, Bailey Jun, did not hesitate to confront Rong Xiu for Jiang Jiwan, and even publicly admitted that he had an illegitimate daughter back then. For someone from a first-rate family like him, this was a stain that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. Bailey Jun went all out just to keep his only descendant. However, after all this, he realized that she was not his descendant at all. Wasn't this too laughable? After going into seclusion for a few years he finally came out, but before he could show off he had already lost all his face. Rong Xiu turned around and looked at the people from Lingxiao College. Sorry for dirtying the school grounds. Elder Bo Yin smiled and said to the people behind him, Don't worry. You guys go and take care of this. Two elders stepped forward and quickly carried Jiang Jiwan and Jiang Hetian's bodies to the side, and quickly cleaned up the dirty ground. Rong Xiu looked at the sky. I have already informed the Jiang family. They should be here in a while. Everyone was speechless. The Jiang family was very far away from here. How could they arrive in such a short time? Unless Rong Xiu had given this order long ago. He was clearly prepared to take the lives of the father and daughter before today. Originally, everyone was here for Chuyu. Who would have thought that Rong Xiu would be the one to clean up the family? This man was still very young, but his thoughts were deep and unpredictable. It was as if everything was under his control. A few years ago, when he took the position of the son of Saint, his fierce reputation was well known, and everyone was quite wary of him. However, until today they realized that they had underestimated Rong Xiu. His mind, means, talent, and strength, he was the best in almost everything. Such a person really couldn't be underestimated. Chu Luiyue turned around, took a deep breath, and then bowed to Elder Bo Yen and the others. Elder Huafeng hurriedly said, Hey little girl, what are you doing? Chu Luiyue smiled apologetically. I used a fake identity to enter the academy and deceive the elders and students. I'm really sorry. Elder Huafeng rubbed his hands. Aya. What's wrong with that? Actually, in the academy, not everyone had used their real identities. You didn't do anything wrong, so why apologize? There were too many people who wanted to come to Lingxiao College to study. There were all kinds of people with different identities. There were many people who changed their names and identities. It was just that Chu Liyue's matter this time was a little bigger. To Yengu it wasn't a big mistake. Elder Bo Yen stroked his beard and nodded, That's right. As long as you didn't do anything against the Academy's principles, the Academy wouldn't pursue this matter. Moreover, you have made several great contributions to the Academy during this period of time. There were countless big and small disasters, but of course this couldn't be mentioned now. Whether you are Chuyu or Shangguanyu, you are still a student of the Academy. The Academy will naturally protect you. As he spoke, Elder Bo Yen looked around. The hint was very obvious. They Lingxiao College didn't care about being deceived by Chu Luiyue. How could others have the right to say anything? Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief and felt grateful at the same time. However, at this moment, a somewhat abrupt voice suddenly sounded. The matter of the Black Demon Cave has been clarified. Concealing your identity. We can also forget about it. However, there is one thing that Shangguanyu hasn't made clear. Is the Heavenly Square Cauldron on you? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1483. Chu Luiyue looked back. The person who spoke was Jin Di. His expression was cold and his eyes were sinister, like a venomous snake that made one's heart tremble. Chu Luiyue sneered in her heart. Jin Di had made up his mind to bite her and not let her go? In front of so many people they couldn't directly snatch the red cloud sword, so they set their sights on other things? Many people immediately became spirited when they heard this. The Heavenly Square Cauldron. This was indeed one of the things they wanted to figure out the most on this trip. The Red Cloud Sword was a venerable artifact and was indeed precious, but it had already recognized its master. Unless Xuanhuan's soul was destroyed, this treasure could not be used in the hands of others. It was meaningless. But the Heavenly Square Cauldron was different. It was one of the 10 great artifacts of the Divine Ruins world. With such a treasure, the status of the entire aristocratic family would rise to a higher level. Those clans that possessed sacred artifacts were usually more confident in their words than others. Therefore they were more interested in the Heavenly Square Cauldron. Chu Luiyue smiled when she heard this. Do you think you'll believe what I say? These people were not easy to deal with. It was impossible to end this matter with just a few words. Jean D laughed sinisterly with a hint of viciousness. As expected of the new princess of the Yuntian Tower. You are indeed insightful. The Heavenly Square Cauldron is related to the matter of the northern region of the primitive world. It is of great significance. Not only me, I believe everyone here also wants to figure it out, right? Some people nodded in agreement. That's not unreasonable. In fact, we are mainly here to figure out this matter. That's right. If everyone could deal with this matter peacefully, that would naturally be the best. If it is proven that you have nothing to do with this matter, then we will apologize. As if they could tell that Rong Xiu cared a lot about this princess consort, everyone's tone was much more polite when they spoke. Their attitude was also not as overbearing as before. Chu Luiyue's eyebrows moved slightly, but she did not take this matter to heart. In the beginning, in their eyes, she was just a youth without any background. With their status, they naturally wouldn't put her in their eyes. In the Divine Ruins world, this was nothing out of the ordinary. There was nothing to care about. But the most important thing was, how was he going to deal with the Heavenly Square Sacred Cauldron? She chuckled and said, I'm already very grateful that everyone is magnanimous enough to not haggle over the previous matters with me. As for the Heavenly Square Cauldron, I will cooperate with the investigation and inquiries. Senior Golden Flute, what do you want to do? Jean D slowly sat up straight. To be honest, my Golden Wing sect has a replica of the Heavenly Square Cauldron that has been preserved for hundreds of years. Rumor has it that this item appeared at the same time as the real one. At that time there were 2 other identical replicas. The Heavenly Square Cauldron is a supreme treasure, so there are fragments. Every time it appeared, it would use a portion of its power to create a few replicas to confuse everyone. Only those who are truly fated and capable can obtain treasures. It's a pity that my Golden Wing sect doesn't have such luck and only obtained a replica. Fortunately, although it's a replica, it still has a portion of the Heavenly Square Cauldron's aura. When it encounters the real one, it will have a strong reaction. As Jean D spoke, he stretched out his hand with his palm facing upwards. A small transparent square cauldron suddenly appeared in his hand. Chu Luiyue's pupils shrank slightly. That thing was indeed exactly the same as the real Heavenly Square Cauldron. Xuanhuan, if you really have a clear conscience, just hold this thing in your hand. If it doesn't have any reaction, it proves that you don't have the Heavenly Square Cauldron. Otherwise, Jean D snorted. The meaning of his words was self-evident. Everyone did not expect that Jean D actually still had such a move. For a moment they all looked at Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and nodded. Good. This move was indeed brilliant. She had to accept it. However, there were some things that were better to clarify. The Golden Wing sect is indeed a big sect with a deep foundation. They even have such a treasure. Chu Luiyue seemed to be very sincere in his praise. Although it's not the real Heavenly Square Cauldron, such an item is indeed a rare treasure. Jean D's eyes were proud. But, why didn't you take it out last time in the northern region of primeval desolation? Chu Luiyue changed the topic. If you were willing to take action at that time and directly identify that it was a fake Heavenly Square Cauldron, then everyone should be able to save a lot of trouble, right? Perhaps there would be fewer casualties. What do you think? Chu Luiyue said, frowning slightly and shaking his head as if he was very regretful. Jean D choked. Wasn't he accusing the Golden Wing sect of standing by and doing nothing? This item wasn't in my hands at that time. He avoided Chu Luiyue's eyes, his expression somewhat evasive. After all, it's a precious item. It has been enshrined in the ancestral temple of the Golden Wing sect for many years. These words were a little ridiculous. This thing was indeed a treasure, but at that time, everyone went to the northern region of primeval desolation for the Heavenly Square Cauldron. How could their people not bring this thing with them to distinguish whether it was real or fake? It was most likely that they had obtained this item recently. Purpose, of course, it was for her. I just don't know where they got this thing from. Chu Luiyue thought to himself. There were quite a few people who wanted to deal with her. In the open and in the dark, they had all gathered together. Chu Luiyue stared at Jean D for a while. Jean D flew into a rage out of humiliation and stood up angrily. What? Are you feeling guilty and don't want to investigate anymore? Chu Luiyue curled his lips into a smile. Senior Jean D, why are you in such a hurry? I've already said that I will definitely cooperate with this investigation and inquiry. However, this matter involves my reputation, so I naturally have to be cautious. Jean D was embarrassed and sat back down, still speaking in a rough voice. You will know the truth once you test it. This was to push all the blame to Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue nodded. Okay. Jean D was delighted and immediately waved his hand. The small transparent square cauldron immediately flew toward Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue's force surged in his palm and quickly put away the thing. The square cauldron stood quietly in Chu Luiyue's palm. Its entire body was transparent, lustrous, clear, and pure. Chu Luiyue looked at it carefully. Just now, she felt that it looked very similar from afar, but when she looked closer she could feel that it was different from the real thing. Ordinary people couldn't see it, but she was the most familiar with the heavenly square cauldron, so she could easily distinguish it. At this moment, a ball of transparent flame suddenly condensed in the small transparent square cauldron. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Buzz. The heavenly square cauldron in her body rumbled. Digression. The comments section said that you is Bailey June's granddaughter. Are you demons? 6 o'clock mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1484. Crack. A crisp cracking sound was heard. The transparent square cauldron in Chu Luiyue's hand was instantly covered with fine cracks. Her heart sank and she immediately suppressed the heavenly square cauldron in her body. However, the connection between the cauldron and the cauldron was so tight that it seemed to be entangled by countless invisible lines. It was impossible to completely block it. The next moment, the small transparent square cauldron shattered with a loud bang. Bang. Pieces of the cauldron flew everywhere. They turned into countless streaks of light and scattered in all directions. Jean D immediately stood up and pointed at Chu Luiyue angrily. The heavenly square cauldron is with you. Everyone was shocked by his words. In an instant, everyone's attention was focused on Chu Luiyue, and their expressions were uncertain. Dead silence. Jean D suppressed the shock in his heart and raised his voice to reprimand. Everyone, you saw it with your own eyes, right? The moment the replica reached Shanghai Yu's hand, it suddenly exploded. If she didn't have the real heavenly square cauldron with her, there wouldn't be such a big reaction. The evidence was conclusive in front of everyone's eyes. Shanghai Yu, do you still want to deny it this time? Chu Luiyue frowned. I see, she had never seen the so-called replica before. Although she knew there might be a reaction, she didn't expect it to be so sudden. She didn't have any time to prepare, and everything happened just like that. Moreover, with so many people watching, it would be difficult for her to edit it even if she wanted to. Countless pairs of eyes fell on Chu Luiyue as if they were real. If the heavenly square cauldron was related to her, didn't it mean that she might have known about what happened in the northern region of the Untainted Land long ago? On the side of Lingxiao College, Elder Bo Yin and the others were all stunned. Didn't she say that the heavenly square cauldron was one of the 10 great divine artifacts and had nothing to do with her? What's going on now? Jean D chased after her and sneered. What's wrong? Don't you dare to speak? Weren't you very confident just now? Now, Before he could finish speaking, his complacent words came to an abrupt halt. It was as if someone had suddenly grabbed him by the neck, and he let out a short and hurried cry of pain. Everyone turned their heads and saw that Jean D's face had turned the color of a pig's liver. His hands were clenched in front of his neck, as if he was desperately pulling something. Looking carefully, one could vaguely see that a golden thread had flown to Jean D's side and was tightly wrapped around his neck. This was what he wanted to break free from. Golden threads. Many people looked at Rong Xiu with trepidation. Noisy. Rong Xiu's voice was cold and his expression was indifferent. For some reason, it sent chills down people's spines. This man was born with a sense of nobility in his bones. She just stood there casually. She had nothing to do with romance, yet she was so noble that people could only look up to her. It was clear that some of the people present were on equal footing with him. In terms of seniority, they were much higher than him. However, his aura had never lost. Even Jean D's heart skipped a beat when he met those cold and deep eyes. He swallowed the curses that were about to come out of his mouth. This Rong Xiu could even humiliate his own family's patriarch in public. He could also quietly change the master of the immortal water tomb, which was the most powerful force under his banner. How could he be a pushover? There was nothing in this world that he couldn't do. Golden Flute swallowed hard and stammered, "What's the matter?" "I just wanted to help everyone find out." Perhaps he was intimidated by Rongxio's power, but his voice was much softer. "Rongxio, he's right. Today we're all here for this. Now that we found some clues, I'm afraid it's not appropriate to just let it go, right?" Someone said. This was not to help Jin but to help themselves. Now that the heavenly square Xingding cauldron had been confirmed to be in Xuanhuan's possession, they would not let it go. That's right. Jindi's attitude is a bit aggressive, but we still have to solve the problem, don't we? Rongxio, although the Yuntian Tower did not publicly participate in the Eldritch Wilderness's northern region incident, you were there at the time. This incident is also related to you. Besides, Xuanhuan is your wife. It's not appropriate for you to side with her, is it? Everyone calm down. We can talk about this peacefully. Someone tried to smooth things over. Xuanhuan hasn't said anything yet. Let's hear it first. Chu Liyue's lips curved up slightly and it was very light. His words seemed fair and impartial, but in fact he was forcing her to give an explanation. Rongxio narrowed his eyes and his aura suddenly turned cold. He hated it when people threatened him. At that moment, a soft and warm hand suddenly reached over. Rongxio turned around and saw Chu Liyue smiling brightly. She gently scratched his broad palm and her eyes curved into crescents. Let me explain this matter. This time it was as if Rongxio's heart was being scratched. His eyebrows twitched slightly, and he quietly held her mischievous little hand. He stared at her determined and persistent eyes for a while before he gently nodded. If you want to say it, then say it. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. His voice was light as he enunciated each word clearly. I'm the wife of the Yuntian Tower. Why can't she have a sage artifact? He was unreasonable. Yet he was arrogant and overbearing. Many people's expressions changed. Rongxio's words were threatening. It seemed like he was going to protect Xuanhuan until the end. Chu Liyue blinked. This man, her red lips curled up. Her face was so beautiful that it could cause the downfall of a city. Her eyes seemed to fill the sky. Just one look at her was enough to make one's heart flutter and be immersed in it. She moved closer and motioned for Rongxio to lower his head. Su Rin bent down and whispered into her ear. She laughed, her voice very low. My man is such a good person. Of course, I won't cause him any trouble. As she spoke, her lips parted and closed. Her soft and moist breath drifted into his ears. Half of Rongxio's body seemed to heat up as well, and the originally suppressed anger in his heart instantly disappeared without a trace. His heart and eyes were filled with only the person beside him. He tightened his grip on her hand and quickly loosened it. His fingertips gently rubbed the back of her hand. Then he straightened his body. Everyone was shocked. Wasn't he full of anger just a moment ago? Why did he suddenly become a different person after hearing Xuanhuan's words? What did Xuanhuan say? However, there was one thing that they were able to see. Rongxio's happiness and anger were closely related to the woman in front of them. Everyone became even more fearful in their hearts. Chu Liyue coughed softly and composed herself. The heavenly square cauldron is indeed with me. However, unlike what you've guessed, I didn't get it from the northern region of the primeval age. In fact, it has recognized me as its master since a few years ago. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1485. It recognized her as its master? Hearing these words, almost everyone present lost their composure. What did you say? The heavenly square cauldron has recognized you? A man who looked to be in his 30s couldn't help but blurt out. Chu Liyue nodded. Doesn't the heavenly square cauldron recognize its master every time it appears? Under normal circumstances, treasures like the heavenly square cauldron would find their own owners. If one could gain its recognition, he or she would naturally become its master. If not, no matter how hard one tried, it would be in vain. Everyone was speechless. They were so focused on finding the heavenly square cauldron that they had forgotten about this. Recognized its master. It had recognized its master. Why were they still working so hard? Wait, you said that you obtained the heavenly square cauldron a few years ago. Do you have any evidence? Another person asked suspiciously. Who knows if you found this treasure in the mysterious canyon? Chu Liyue laughed. Why would I lie about this? To be honest, the heavenly square cauldron is the main reason why I can contract with two divine beasts. If you don't believe me, I can't do anything about it. Everyone was stunned. They almost forgot that xuanhuan did contract with two divine beasts. One was a crimson gold heavenly phoenix and the other was a three-eyed legendary eagle. Moreover, they were the eagle lords. At first they found it strange as well. These two divine beasts shouldn't contract with the same person at the same time. If she had the heavenly square cauldron, it would make sense. It was a sacred artifact after all. Then, many people looked at each other and didn't know where to start. At this moment, Jean D finally calmed down and asked while panting. Since the heavenly square cauldron has been with you for a long time, you must have known from the beginning that the news about the eldritch northern region was fake. Everyone's hearts trembled. Chu Luiyue nodded calmly. That's right. Even the elders of the academy couldn't sit still after hearing her words. This girl knew it all along? Then so at that time I planned to go with everyone from the academy to see what was going on. At this point there was no need to hide many things anymore. Chu Luiyue decided to lay his cards on the table. It's a pity that I fell sick at the last minute and stayed in the academy. I couldn't go with them. Fortunately, something happened in the northern region of the Untainted Land, so I had a second chance to go there. And that time I did go. The elders who traveled with me in the academy can attest to this. Elder Huafeng quickly nodded. Not bad, not bad. At that time I didn't agree, but this girl was very insistent, so I took her with me. At that time he only thought that she was young and impetuous and curious. Who would have thought that there were so many twists and turns in her story? Chu Luiyue smiled gratefully at Elder Huafeng. Elder Huafeng shook his head and quickly turned his head away, grabbing the armrest beside him. This was too similar. He rubbed the space between his eyebrows and kept reminding himself. Two people. There were two of them. Chu Luiyue didn't notice the conflict in Elder Huafeng's heart. She looked at the crowd with an open mind. At that time, I wanted to go to the northern region of the Untainted Land and investigate before making a decision. However, I didn't expect what happened after that. The man in his 30s who couldn't hold back his impulse to speak at the beginning couldn't help but shout. You didn't expect it? Do you think you can send us away so easily with just a few words? Shengguanyu, do you know that if you had said so earlier, so many people wouldn't have died? Chu Luiyue's expression was cold, and her gaze was like a knife. Do you mean that you want me to be responsible for the deaths of those people? At the very least, you have to bear half of the responsibility, right? The other party was obviously more agitated. If you had said so earlier, we wouldn't have ended up like this. Heh. Chu Luiyue suddenly laughed. Forgive me for not agreeing with your words. Her gaze swept across everyone like a sharp sword that had been tempered by ice. It pierced straight to the bottom of their hearts. You went to the northern region of the Untainted Land just to snatch the supreme treasure. This matter doesn't seem to have anything to do with me, right? What did their lives have to do with her? Besides, even if I had said so at that time, would you have believed me? Her clear and indifferent rhetorical question left those people speechless. They indeed wouldn't believe the words of an ordinary student of Lingxiao College. Moreover, it was related to the heavenly square cauldron. Such a supreme treasure in the hands of a teenager. Just thinking about it made them feel that it was a fantasy. Why would anyone listen to her? Chu Luiyue tucked the stray hair on her cheek behind her ear, shrugged and chuckled. Everyone should know the principle of alerting the enemy better than I do, right? Did they want her to put herself in danger for some irrelevant people? Even they wouldn't do that themselves. From the beginning to the end, the only people I wanted to save were the people of Lingxiao College. The lives of others have nothing to do with me. Her words were loud and clear. It sounded so resolute, but it was understandable. Everyone was speechless for a moment. Suddenly, someone spoke in a cold voice. You said that you have nothing to do with the Black Demon Cave and that the Heavenly Square Cauldron had recognized you as its master a few years ago. How could it be so coincidental that among so many people, only you successfully entered the mysterious area in the canyon? Shengguanyu, do you really not have any secrets that you can't tell others? Chu Luiyue looked in the direction of the voice. It was a man who looked about 40 years old. His face was ordinary and his eyes were cold. Just as Chu Luiyue was about to speak, she suddenly heard loud laughter from the distant horizon. The laughter was as loud as thunder. She is a descendant of the Xuanhuan clan. Naturally, only she can enter my territory. This voice was vast and ethereal, but it was incomparably clear when it entered their ears. Everyone was shocked and turned to look in unison. Chu Luiyue's heart also skipped a beat. She looked in the direction of the voice. A tall and burly figure was rapidly approaching from the sky. He was dressed in a long black robe, and he walked 1,000 miles in a single step. Today I am here. I want to see who dares to bully her. Impressive pressure. Astonishing state of mind. Digression. Tomorrow, 12 o'clock, mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1486. A Venerable God Expert. Elder Bo Yin stood up abruptly and looked at the person who had just arrived. The other party's aura was tyrannical and oppressive. He was definitely an expert among experts. He turned his gaze and looked at Chu Luiyue. Chulas, who is that? That man said, descendant of the Xuanhuan family. Wasn't he referring to Xuanhuan? Didn't they say that this girl was an outsider? How did she have such a powerful helper? Many people pricked up their ears. Chu Luiyue looked at the middle-aged man who was striding over from the horizon. Her heart was strong and intense as it kept beating. Bang bang. Bang bang. Great ancestor. She muttered softly. Her eyes were filled with disbelief and unconcealable joy. Rong Xiu sensed her emotional fluctuations. His gaze turned slightly and a hint of a smile flashed across his eyes. I didn't expect this person to come so quickly. In the blink of an eye, Taizu's figure was already in front of her. His robes fluttered in the wind. He walked step by step in front of Chu Luiyue and looked at her with a smile. Chu Luiyue looked at him in a daze. For a moment she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Taizu's figure and appearance hadn't changed much. It was just that the translucent soul in the past had now become a corporeal body. His brows and expression were so familiar and intimate. Taizu bent down slightly and looked straight at Chu Luiyue. What? It's only been a while since we last met. Don't you recognize me? Chu Luiyue was still in a daze. Taizu? She really didn't expect that the person who appeared would be Taizu. Back in the northern region of the primordial desolate land, she vaguely guessed that Taizu should have been there. Later on, she also knew that it should be Taizu's tomb. There, she also thought that Taizu might be able to come back to life. But she never expected that it would actually be true. Furthermore, Taizu's strength seemed to be extremely powerful. Taizu looked at Chu Luiyue, who was rarely at a loss and could not help but laugh. He reached out his big hand and rubbed her head. Ah, was this girl really that stupid? Wasn't she happy that Taizu was here? Everyone was shocked. Taizu? Is this man a Taizu from Xuanhuan? However, it seemed that he had never heard of an expert with the surname Xuanhuan in the Divine Ruins world. If there was no way they wouldn't know. Many people looked at each other, but it was obvious that they did not know much about this middle-aged man who had suddenly appeared. However, his appearance caused the crowd to feel a bit of fear. Not only did Shanghai have the support of Lingxiao College and Yuntian Tower, but they also had a god-level master. Moreover, judging from his aura, he could practically crush most of the people present. If this person was really a Taizu from Xuanhuan, then they were connected by blood and would definitely protect each other to the end. Taizu, I'll help you solve these small problems first. Taizu said with a smile, then turned around and looked at everyone present. Finally, his gaze fixed on the man in his 40s who had questioned Chu Luiyue just now. The smile on his face faded a lot, and his gaze was like a knife that scraped across the man's body, as if he wanted to directly use a knife to kill the man. Sensing the faint pain in his body, the man was a little scared and his eyes unconsciously avoided looking at Taizu. Taizu suddenly asked, "Just now were you the one who forced our Yuer?" His voice was no longer as gentle as when he spoke to Chu Luiyue. It was as cold as frost. Every word seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 caddies as it came crashing down heavily. The man's heart trembled. From the moment this person appeared, he knew that this person was not to be trifled with. I was just asking about some things. I didn't mean to force her. Everyone is here and can testify for me. When Taizu heard this, the corners of his mouth twitched without a smile. Is that so? Cold sweat broke out on the man's back. He had seen a lot of big scenes. If the other party wasn't too strong, he wouldn't be like this. Of course it's true. The reason why I asked that was to give her a chance to clear her name. Bang. Before he could finish his sentence, Taizu suddenly raised his hand. A bluish-black force suddenly flew out. The man's body was immediately sent flying and then fell heavily to the ground. Taizu sneered. Who do you think you are? How dare you interrogate you? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1487. The surroundings instantly became so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone was stupefied by this sudden scene. He attacked. He attacked just like that. Wasn't he too direct? This man was also from a first-rate family. Although he was a little desolate now and couldn't be compared to the Yuntian Tower and the Meteor sect, he still had the reputation of a first-rate family. Everyone more or less gave him some face. Who knew that this man who suddenly appeared would actually start a fight without a word? You. The man who was beaten was obviously stunned. He coughed a few times and spat out a few broken teeth. They mixed with the dark red blood and looked very miserable. Master. When the few people who followed the man saw this scene, they hurriedly rushed over and helped him up. Master, are you all right? Yilingran couldn't wait to kick these blind people to death. Did he look like he was fine? But now, if these people didn't stand by the side to support him, he was afraid that he wouldn't even be able to stand properly. That attack just now came too suddenly and caught him off guard. And it was extremely strong. It was extremely ruthless. Half of his face was numb now. Every part of his body seemed to have been ruthlessly crushed by something. It was extremely painful. Every time he breathed, there was a piercing pain in his chest and abdomen. His bones were probably broken and his internal organs were ruptured. He pointed at Taizu with a trembling hand. However, when he met that pair of cold and indifferent eyes, his heart couldn't help but tremble. He curled his finger and retracted it. However, the anger on his face was still obvious. You launched a sneak attack without a word. Isn't that too much? Taizu simply laughed out loud. What? Sneak attack? Of course it's a sneak attack. The man panted heavily. His face was red and white. Everyone was fine at first. You suddenly attacked. Naturally, it's considered a sneak attack. Sir, even if Xuanhuan is your family and you want to protect him, you can't do this. You're really going too far. Taizu narrowed his eyes and snorted. When this sovereign made his move, everyone present clearly saw it. I was standing right in front of you. You couldn't even see that. Are you blind? Yilingran never would have thought that not only was this person's strength formidable, his skin was also as thick as a city wall. He spat out a mouthful of blood, his heart filled with hatred. Being beaten to such a state in front of so many people, he had completely lost all his face. There are so many people here. Everyone has been talking nicely since the beginning. No one dared to make a move. And you, that's your business. What does it have to do with me? Taizu interrupted him impatiently, then raised his eyebrows and looked around. His gaze was as cold as a knife. It's true that you didn't directly take action against you, but which one of you didn't bully her? You are all from first-rate families and clans. No matter how you look at it, you are all people with reputations. But, in the end, you actually joined hands to interrogate a teenage girl. Even if you don't feel ashamed, I feel ashamed for you. This sentence successfully caused the expressions of many people present to change. However, he couldn't say anything to refute. Taizu coldly glanced at Yilingran. If you don't have the strength, then don't come out and make a fuss. How shameful. Yilingran's chest tightened. His vision turned black and he almost fainted on the ground. Who are you? How dare you be so arrogant here? He said these words with a strong appearance but a weak heart. No matter what the other party's identity was, his strength was obvious. If he made a move without saying anything again, Taizu sneered. You don't have the right to ask me this question. Yilingran swallowed a mouthful of blood. His face was pale and his whole body trembled. Taizu didn't care. He turned his head and looked to the other side. Are you from the Golden Wing sect? Naturally he was asking Jindi. Jindi's heart suddenly jumped when he was suddenly called out. He opened his mouth and felt a little weak. Yes, that's right. Just now, Yilingran was beaten up like this by this man. He didn't even have the strength to fight back. It was really terrifying. Now, this person was facing him again. It was impossible to say that he wasn't nervous. What do you want to do? Jindi clenched his fists. Taizu tilted his head and pondered for a moment. Then he turned around and asked Chu Liwei, last time in the northern region of the primordial desolate land, this thing has been making things difficult for you, right? Although he was still asleep at that time, he could vaguely feel what had happened inside and outside the canyon. Therefore he remembered Jindi and he had a deep impression of him. Hearing Taizu's words, Jindi suddenly felt that something was wrong. Could it be that this person had been targeting him since the northern region of the primordial desolate land? Then, it's him. Chu Liwei nodded slightly, and then the corners of his mouth curved slightly. Senior Jindi has always been very concerned about my affairs. Jindi was shocked. Xuanhuan, what nonsense are you talking about? Wasn't he deliberately making enemies for him? I'm not talking nonsense. Chu Luiyue looked innocent. From the Scarlet Cloud Sword to the Heavenly Square Cauldron, haven't you or the Golden Wing sect been very active in participating? Participating? I'm afraid you're just making trouble. Rong Xiu's thin lips curled up slightly as he glanced at her. This girl became bold again when she saw Taizu. She was getting more and more skilled at tricking people. I was just, come here? Jean D wanted to defend himself, but before he could say anything he heard the man ask him to go over. He swallowed hard. If you have something to say, just say it. He wouldn't go over. Wouldn't that be courting death? Just now, when he attacked Yi Lingran, all the people from the Golden Wing sect added together were probably no match for him. Then why would he go up and look for trouble? Taizu's expression faded a little, and his voice also turned cold. I said to ask you to come over. Didn't you hear me? Every word was full of oppression. As if a heavy hammer had hit his heart, Jean D only felt uncomfortable. He gritted his teeth. Actually, everyone just doesn't want to cause any misunderstandings. Haven't the previous misunderstandings already been resolved? Taizu was impatient to listen to his nonsense. He suddenly raised his hand. His fingers clenched. Swish. Jean D only felt a strong force attack him. The next moment his body flew forward uncontrollably. The biting cold wind was like a knife, cutting across his face. Before he could react, his neck suddenly felt cold. Then he tightened his grip. Ugh. Jean D let out a short cry of pain and then he couldn't say anything. Taizu clamped his neck with one hand and asked coldly, Do you think I'm as stupid as you? Jean D wanted to speak but he couldn't spit out a word. His face quickly turned red and the veins on his forehead bulged. Only his body was struggling desperately. Unfortunately, Taizu was as steady as a rock, and his efforts were in vain. Taizu held him with one hand and looked around at the same time. Today all of you listen carefully. All the inheritances in the canyon in the northern part of the primitive world belong to the Xuanhuan clan. If anyone wants to compete with you, they will end up like him. Click. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1488. The crisp sound of bones cracking could be heard. The great ancestor casually threw Jean D's body and she fell to the ground softly. His eyes were bulging, his face was bruised, and his head was tilted to one side in a strange posture. There were a few blood stains on his neck, and the dark red blood seemed to be about to burst out from under his skin. His eyes were unfocused, his expression was stagnant, and his breath was gone. He was obviously dead. The air in the huge square suddenly seemed to freeze. Everyone was shocked on the spot. What happened just now? This man actually killed Jean D directly? The remaining people of the Golden Wing sect panicked when they saw this scene. Second Master. They wanted to rush over but the corpse was right next to Taizu. They were full of fear and did not dare to approach. So they could only stand in the distance and watch anxiously and fearfully. One of them finally mustered up his courage and shouted, Do you know who this is? This is the only brother of our Golden Wing sect master. Our sect master will not let today's matter go. What a coincidence. Taizu patted his hands lightly as if he felt that his hands were stained with something dirty, and said with a faint smile, It just so happens that I also feel that killing him alone is not enough. Everyone, listen to that. Was this something a human would say? Not only did he kill one but he also felt that it was not enough? Could it be that he wanted to completely destroy the Golden Wing sect? As soon as these words came out, the faces of those followers turned pale as well. Taizu looked at them and smiled. Don't worry, I won't kill you. After all, someone has to go back and report the death. Moreover, he felt that he would lose face if he personally killed these people. Everyone, Chu Luiyue was in awe of Taizu and silently gave him a thumbs up in his heart. Rong Xiu suddenly came over and lowered his voice. So your temperament is inherited from your clan. Ordinary people really couldn't learn this ability to anger people to death without paying for it. His voice was low and pleasant, and there was a hint of a smile in it. Mixed with the scorching hot breath, it scattered on her slender neck, causing her to feel numb. She turned around and glared at him angrily. But now that she saw Taizu, her heart was filled with joy. Even this glance was exceptionally bright and dazzling. Ripples of light rippled, shaking people's hearts. Rong Xiu glanced at her delicate red earlobes and chuckled. I like it very much. After he finished speaking, he was satisfied to see a touch of red spread to his porcelain-like cheeks. Only then did the man step back in satisfaction. His face was upright and his eyes were sharp. He was like a gentleman, incomparably handsome. It was as if he hadn't said those words. Chu Luiyue snorted. With Taizu around, let's see if he can still be impudent. She retracted her gaze and glanced at Jindi's corpse. The Golden Wing sect had gone too far. During this period of time, they had provoked her quite a few times. However, she didn't expect that before she could counterattack, Taizu would make a move. Moreover, it was so simple and crude. Needless to say, awesome. Looks like you're really brave and insightful. You've made up your mind to completely break off relations with the Golden Wing sect? Suddenly, a voice came from the crowd. The one who spoke was the man in his 30s who had questioned Chu Luiyue before. Compared to the other old foxes on the scene, he seemed to be a lot more impulsive. Could it be ignorant and fearless? At this time he was frowning and there was a bit of cold ridicule in his eyes. Obviously, he didn't think that Taizu alone could provoke the entire Golden Wing sect. Taizu glanced at him and suddenly laughed. You should ask the Golden Wing sect about this. Their ancestors didn't dare to fall out with me. But when it came to them, they were very happy. Digression. This was a February that couldn't sleep until 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1489. The surrounding crowd fell silent. There was too much information in this sentence, and ordinary people couldn't react in time. Even Chu Luiyue was shocked and looked at Taizu in surprise. From what Taizu said, he had interacted with the people of the Golden Wing sect in the past. And the other party was very respectful and careful of him? Was it true? To be able to make the ancestors of the Golden Wing sect so afraid, how strong was Taizu back then? Her heart was pounding, but when she thought of the 9 canyons and several dragon skeletons in the north of the primordial world, she felt that it might not be impossible. The people on the other side were obviously frightened by Taizu's words. The man who spoke was quite confident, but when he saw Taizu's reaction, he immediately wavered. Who are you? There was no such person in the world of divine ruins, right? Even if he pushed it forward, there didn't seem to be anyone. The other party was indeed powerful. If he didn't have any background, he wouldn't dare to say this in front of so many people. Taizu put one hand behind his back and said calmly, My real name is Xianhuan. However, you might be more familiar with my other name, Mu Tianjing. Mu Tianjing? I think I've heard this name before, someone in the crowd muttered softly. I think I've heard this name before too. I just can't remember it at the moment. Mu Tianjing. Mu Tianjing? Many people frowned as they tried to recall. Chu Luiyue turned her head and glanced at Rongxiu. She had never heard of the name Taizu. She didn't know if Rongxiu knew anything about it. As if seeing through her thoughts, Rongxiu smiled and nodded. Chu Luiyue widened her eyes slightly, and then became even more curious. Taizu? Mu Tianjing? Muzun? Yaobin murmured. Suddenly, a white light flashed in his mind. He looked at Taizu in shock and bewilderment. You're Muzun? You're still alive? He asked this question very carefully and cautiously. Many people looked over curiously. Muzun? What did he mean? Wait. Rumor had it that 1,000 years ago, an equipment refinement venerable had appeared out of nowhere in the Divine Ruins world. He was peerlessly powerful, and he had even challenged 7 equipment refinement venerables without losing. Could it be? Ruer seemed to have suddenly thought of something. She widened her eyes in shock and looked at Taizu in disbelief. After a brief moment of silence, the crowd in the square burst into an uproar. So it was him. In fact, they had more or less heard of this person. Because this person's experience was simply too legendary. Back then he did not have any background and had roamed the Divine Ruins world alone. Arrogant to the extreme. However, this person was truly capable. Weapon refining venerables were as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns in the entire Divine Ruins. As for him, he only went to find these people. To put it nicely, it was called sparring. To put it bluntly, it was called killing. It was said that the 7 weapon-crafting sovereigns were greatly affected by his repeated defeats. Some went into seclusion for 100 years and cultivated crazily. Some were full of admiration for him. They gave up their families and clans and said that they would follow him no matter what. The last one was the most miserable. Because of the blow, he directly became a monk. The reason was very simple. He realized that he had cultivated for 100 years, but he was not as good as the other party who had cultivated for 10 years. It was really a heavy blow. Moreover, at that time, these 7 matches were held consecutively within 3 months. It was almost a seamless match. After one match, the next one followed. That equipment refinement venerable was the seventh. He had thought that after the previous 6 matches, Mu Tianjing would definitely not be his match. He had never expected that he would lose so badly in the end. He couldn't think straight for a moment. From then on, he abandoned his cultivation and devoted himself to Buddhism. It was also because of this that those first-rate families and clans had formed a grudge with Mu Tianjing. Unfortunately, Mu Tianjing had already become famous at that time. There were many more people who wanted to ask him to help them refine equipment than there were people who wanted his life. Therefore, those people could only leave it unsettled in the end. Unexpectedly, not long after, Mu Tianjing suddenly disappeared. Many people tried their best to find him, but they still couldn't find any trace of him. Some people said that he was dead. Some people said that he had hidden his identity. In short, there were all kinds of guesses. With the passage of time, everyone gradually forgot about this matter. In 1,000 years, the world had changed. Things remained the same, but people had changed. If it weren't for this person's amazing achievements back then, no one would have remembered him now. Taizu stroked his beard. What? Are you disappointed that I didn't die? No. We definitely didn't mean that. Yao Bin reacted immediately and immediately denied it. Back then, the ancestors of the Yao family had been taught by you and have always been grateful. It's just that they couldn't repay you and have always felt guilty. I never thought that I would be able to see you today. Yao Bin wiped the sweat off his forehead in fear and trepidation. What he said was true. The reason why he could remember Taizu's identity so quickly was indeed because the Yao family had interacted with Taizu before. Back then, Taizu had offended many families and clans, but his ability to refine equipment had helped more people. The Yao family was one of them. Taizu glanced at him, narrowed his eyes, and thought for a long time before saying, "Are you the descendant of Yao Qingxin?" Yao Bin hurriedly said, "Yes." Junior Yao Bin greets Mu Zun. As he spoke, he politely cupped his hands to Chu Luiyue and said apologetically, "Miss Xuanhuan, I'm really sorry for offending you before." Rong Xiu raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly and reminded him, is now the princess of the Yuntian Tower. Patriarch Yao, you can just call her princess. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1490. Taizu suddenly turned around, narrowed his eyes and looked meaningfully at Rong Xiu. The two men looked at each other. For a moment there seemed to be sparks. Come here. Chu Liwei coughed softly and walked over. Taizu put a hand on her shoulder. We are really a family. We don't like to use our real names when we are outside. Since it's a coincidence today, let me formally introduce her to everyone. He looked around, the corners of his lips raised and his smile was proud. This is my descendant, Xuanhuan Yu. She is also the most outstanding genius of my Xuanhuan family. She is the apple of my eye. Everyone heard it clearly. She was a member of the Xuanhuan family. Chu Luiyue smiled helplessly. Taizu had been with her for a long time. He knew how Rong Xiu treated her, but he still wanted to do this. She didn't know that Taizu didn't say much in the past because he was only an incomplete soul at that time. There wasn't much he could help with. Other than protecting her by her side, he couldn't think of anything else. But it was different now. His divine body had awakened, and he had basically recovered his previous memories and strength. Was no longer a lowly outsider. She was the bloodline that Xuanhuan Jing cared about the most. These people relied on their good backgrounds to criticize and force her step by step. Their Yu was so good. How could they bully her at will? Taizu's voice was deep and powerful. From today onwards, if anyone wants to bully our they have to ask for my permission first. Every word was sonorous and oppressive. Many people's hearts trembled. This Xuanhuan Jing wasn't an easy person to get along with. Although he was alone, but he was a venerable weapon refiner. Moreover, he was an abnormal existence who had once defeated 7 weapon refining venerables in a row. In the current Divine Ruins world, this kind of person was simply someone that every family crazily fought to curry favor with. Who would dare to be rude to them? Chu Liuyue's heart warmed. Taizu was backing her up. She could clearly feel that the way the people around her looked at her was very different from before. Lingxiao College and Rong Xiu had indeed been helping her. But when Taizu made a move, it was different. Whether it was Lingxiao College or Rong Xiu, to a certain extent she seemed to be dependent on them. But Taizu was her closest kin. In the Divine Ruins world, without background, you would always be inferior to others. But now, with Taizu here, she was no longer alone. With such a top-notch expert, he was her strongest backer. Now, what else do you want to continue interrogating Taizu asked slowly. Many people's expressions changed. What was the point of asking? You've already acted in such a domineering manner, what else do you want others to say? They did not want to end up like Jean D. Yi Lingran quietly retreated, trying to hide his figure as much as possible. At this moment he realized that the other party had already held back his strength when he attacked just now. Otherwise he would have been beheaded by now. The Xuanhuan Jing and Xuanhuan Yu, these two people, were not to be trifled with. He must be crazy to rush to the front like that just now. Taizu glanced at him indifferently and then retracted his gaze. Killing a chicken to warn the monkeys was necessary, but he had to choose a good chicken. A low-level one would dirty his hands. After waiting for a moment, Taizu nodded in satisfaction. It seems that everyone has nothing else to ask. All the misunderstandings have been explained clearly. Then from now on apologize to you, or one by one. He raised his chin. Yi Lingran's body stiffened. Let's start with you. Digression. A useless February. I feel that I can't handle it. What I lack today will be made up in the next few days. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1491. Everyone was stunned. They thought that the matter would be over, but they didn't expect this to happen. They didn't ask any more questions. They had already taken a step back and chosen to compromise. Why was Xuanhuan Jing still unwilling to let them go? It was inappropriate for them to join forces to deal with Xuanhuan Yu, but that was also for everyone to clear up the matter. They didn't intend to make an example of a child like her. Besides, these people here were of high status. One by one they lined up to apologize to a little girl. What was going on? Although this little girl was now the princess consort of Yintian Tower and was also Xuanhuan Jing's favorite descendant, it was fine for them to apologize. How could they really do that? Xuanhuan Jing had already expected that they wouldn't agree. Hey, didn't you say that you would apologize to you, or after the matter is investigated? Are you going back on your word now? Everyone looked at each other. It was just a casual remark. How could they take it seriously? It wasn't that Xuanhuan Jing didn't understand, but that he had made up his mind to help his baby save face. However, they really couldn't do that. What would happen if word got out? They didn't want to save face. After a moment of silence, Yaobin took the initiative to step forward and speak. Senior Mu, Senior Xuanhuan, we were indeed in the wrong this time. And part of what happened just now was also related to me. Why don't I represent everyone and apologize to little Xuanhuan? Perhaps because he remembered Rong Xiu's reminder just now, he didn't say the words Miss Xuanhuan completely. After saying this, Yaobin's back was already covered in cold sweat. A breeze blew and it was cold. On one side was Yuntian Tower and on the other side was Xuanhuan Jing. They couldn't afford to offend either of them. Xuanhuan Jing glanced at him indifferently. You. Before he could say anything, Chu Liwei suddenly tugged at his sleeve gently. Taizu. Hearing this, Taizu hurriedly turned his head. His originally dignified and cold face suddenly had a cheerful smile. What's wrong, Yuer? The corners of everyone's mouth twitched when they saw how quickly his face changed. You can have double standards, but this is too much. When he turned his head, he saw two completely different faces. Chu Liwei blinked. Taizu, I think Princess Yao's suggestion is pretty good. Yaobin looked at Chu Liwei gratefully as if he had been granted amnesty. He wasn't doing this for himself, but mainly because he didn't want to make the situation too tense. If today's matter could be resolved peacefully, it would naturally be for the best. If Shanghai Yu was willing to step in and mediate between the two parties, it would save everyone a lot of trouble. Taizu narrowed his eyes. Do you really think so? Chu Liwei smiled. That's right. In fact, Princess Yao was right. Everyone was here today to investigate some things. As for me, I might have caused a lot of misunderstandings in the past. It's not a bad idea to use this opportunity to make things clear to everyone. The Taizu's eyes were filled with pity. But you've suffered too much this time? He would feel terrible if he didn't help her vent her anger. Had suffered a lot in the past. It wasn't easy for her to return to Tianling and take back everything that belonged to her. In the blink of an eye, she was surrounded and bullied by so many people in the world of God. If it were someone else, they might not be able to take it. Chu Liu's heart warmed. Her eyes reddened, but her smile was extremely bright. Don't I have you? There was also Rong Xiu in the academy. These people were actually on her side and had been helping her all this time. Taizu, I'm very happy that you're back. I don't feel bad about anything else. Instead of wasting time arguing with these people, it was better to chat with Taizu. Taizu looked at her, his heart aching. But in the end, he gently stroked her hair. Okay, I'll listen to you. Yi Lingran heaved a sigh of relief. His knees went weak and he almost fell to the ground. The attendant beside him hurriedly supported him. Taizu glanced at him and sneered. He felt annoyed just by looking at this kind of thing. The tense hearts of the others also relaxed a lot. Fortunately, things didn't get to the worst point. Yaobin took a deep breath, took a few steps forward, and bowed to Chu Luiyue with cupped fists. Shengguanyu, we believed Dazzling Eye and made wild guesses. We misunderstood you and caused you a lot of trouble. We're really sorry. I, Yaobin, would like to represent everyone here to solemnly say, I'm sorry. His tone was very sincere. On one hand, he felt that he had misunderstood Chu Luiyue. On the other hand, he wanted to repair his relationship with Shengguanjing as much as possible. So, at this time he was showing his utmost sincerity. Others might feel embarrassed, but in Yao Bin's opinion, an apology wasn't worth anything. It would be best if Shengguanjing could let this matter go. Even if it couldn't for the time being, it was good to have a good start. Chu Luiyue smiled and returned the greeting. Princess Yao, you're too polite. These things were obviously planned by someone in the dark. What she really wanted to deal with was the mastermind, not this group of people who were used as tools. After hearing Chu Luiyue's reply, Yao Bin's heart finally relaxed a lot. Suddenly Taizu, who was standing at the side, raised his eyebrows. That's it? Yao Bin quivered and hurriedly looked at Taizu's expression. After all, he was the princess of Ziguang County and had been in the Divine Ruins world for many years. He still had a discerning eye. He immediately understood Taizu's meaning. Yes. Also. Well, no matter what, we were in the wrong first this time. We're in the wrong. Just saying sorry is not enough to make up for the harm we've caused you. As he spoke, he took out a sandalwood box from the purple thumb ring on his hand. The box was only the size of a palm, but it was very exquisite and carefully carved. There was a faint layer of light around it. It was not an ordinary item. As he handed the sandalwood box to Chu Luiyue, he explained. This is the blood cloud spirit ginseng that I just got a while ago. It's a small token of my appreciation. Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up. Blood cloud spirit ginseng. It was said that it could revive the dead and was very effective. It was also very gentle and did not have any side effects. This thing was extremely precious. Even the medicine Wind Valley of Lingxiao College did not have it. If Jiang Jiwan had this thing just now, she might have been able to save half of her life. She looked at Taizu hesitantly. This, Princess Yao, you're too polite. Yao Bin pushed forward again. This is nothing. It's just a small thing. Hurry up and accept it. Otherwise, it means that you don't accept this apology. We won't feel at ease, right? Taizu nodded. It's their good intentions. Just accept it. Chu Luiyue reluctantly took it. I'm really sorry. Taizu raised his gaze and looked at the others who were watching. Suddenly he smiled. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1492. A quarter of an hour later, Chu Luiyue touched his universe ring, which had been filled up a lot, and was satisfied. This feeling of receiving a gift for free, it couldn't be any better. Not only did he not need to return the gift, he didn't feel the slightest bit of burden. Seniors, you are so generous. Yue is really ashamed to accept it. Chu Luiyue sighed with emotion. Everyone gritted their teeth silently. Ashamed to accept it? Don't take it. But anyone with eyes could see that you were very happy when you were collecting them. Unfortunately, they couldn't say that. Using a gift to replace an apology was the most acceptable compromise at the moment. Seeing that Chu Luiyue was happy, Taizu's mood improved a lot, and he couldn't help but laugh. Yue, the people here today are all first-rate families and clans in the Divine Ruins world. What you have is nothing to them. Don't be so noisy all the time. Those who don't know will think that we are deliberately cheating them. Everyone vomited blood. Isn't this cheating them? Their families were rich, but the things they gave out were the treasures of the treasures. This was simply cutting off their flesh. But what could they do? Putting aside Shengguanyu, Shengguanjing had sharp eyes. He could tell whether the things given were good or bad, expensive or cheap with just a glance. At this time, who would dare to take the risk of offending him again and pass off shoddy goods as good ones? Therefore, no matter how much their hearts ached, they had to give away the treasures. So be it. As long as they could end today's matter. After a while, someone finally bid farewell and left. In any case, the doubts about Chu Luiyue had basically been explained or resolved today. There was no point in continuing to stay here. Among them, a portion of people, including Yao Bin, were still trying to curry favor with Taizu. If they could establish a relationship with a living weapon refining venerable, the benefits would be unimaginable. However, Taizu was obviously not interested in this and dismissed them with a few words. The only thing he cared about now was Chu Luiyue. How could he care about anything else? When Yao Bin and the others saw that their hopes were slim, they could only leave in disappointment. Sheng Guanjing obviously hadn't completely calmed down today, so it was normal for him to ignore them. Perhaps it wouldn't be too late to think of a solution after some time. Soon the crowd in the huge black and white square dispersed. The surroundings gradually became deserted, but it was also much quieter and more peaceful. Looking at the empty square, Chu Luiyue exhaled softly. It's finally over. He had experienced too many things in a single day. Previously, his mind had been in a tense state, so he didn't feel it. Now that he was suddenly free, a heavy sense of exhaustion swept over him. She was not a god, so of course she would be tired. Dealing with so many people at once, and all of them had extraordinary statuses, he naturally had to be more careful. All of this required a lot of mental energy and strength. Fortunately, everything was resolved smoothly. Furthermore, in the end he even managed to make a huge profit. This made her a lot happier. Taizu. Just as Chu Luiyue opened his mouth, a familiar voice came from behind him. Senior Shangguan. Chu Luiyue turned around. Elder Bo Yen. Everyone from the academy had gathered together, and Elder Bo Yen stood at the front. He smiled and cupped his hands, bowing to Taizu. I've heard a lot about you. I didn't expect to have the chance to meet you in this lifetime. It's really an honor. From the outside, Taizu looked to be in his 30s or 40s, younger than Elder Bo Yen and the others. However, his seniority was the highest among the people present, and even Elder Bo Yen had to call him senior cleanly. Taizu smiled. This venerable one has been asleep for too long. The world outside has changed. During this period of time, I have to thank everyone for taking care of you. Previously, he had stayed with Chu Luiyue in Lingxiao College for a period of time. He knew that these people were sincerely good to Chu Luiyue, so his attitude towards them was much better than when he faced those people just now. Seeing him like this, Elder Bo Yen and the others heaved a sigh of relief. Based on the situation just now, they thought that this venerable one would be difficult to get along with. You're too polite. Shanghai Yu is a student of our Lingxiao College, so we naturally have to protect her. Also, this time we didn't protect her well and caused her to be wronged. Elder Bo Yen sighed. Taizu frowned slightly, and the unhappiness in his heart dissipated. His Yuer might not blame the academy, but he was different. Yuer was wronged, and he couldn't help but feel that Lingxiao College didn't do its duty. The reason why he didn't pursue the matter was because he knew that Lingxiao College was already doing its duty to an ordinary student. Moreover, Yuer's relationship with the academy had always been good, and he didn't want to cause trouble because of this. It was good that Elder Bo Yen was willing to take the initiative to admit it. The expression in his eyes softened a lot. This venerable one knows that this matter was planned by someone behind the scenes. Elder Bo Yen, you don't have to blame yourself. Oh? Then do you know who that person is? Elder Bo Yen and the others were shocked. Taizu thought for a moment and shook his head. We only have some clues, but we haven't completely investigated it. Everyone was a little disappointed. It's good to have clues. As long as we investigate carefully, we will definitely be able to figure out what's going on. Elder Huafeng happily came out to smooth things over. Senior Shangguan Bo Yen, since the matter is over, let's go back to the academy? Elder Wensi reminded from the side. It wasn't appropriate to stand here forever. Yes. Let's go back first. Too many things have happened today and you must be tired. When he said the two words, Elder Bo Yen paused for a moment, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. She roughly knew what Elder Bo Yen was thinking. Elder Bo Yen is right. Taizu, let's go back first. Chu Luiyue smiled. Taizu nodded and patted her head. A wonderful show came to an end. When everyone returned to the academy, they were still filled with emotions when they thought of everything that had happened today. Originally, Elder Bo Yen and the others wanted to ask Chu Luiyue something, but Taizu rejected them with the reason that she wanted to rest. Everyone could only give up and let Chu Luiyue go back to rest. Taizu naturally followed Chu Luiyue back to Mount Jianghu. Rong Xiu followed the two to the door. Just as he was about to enter, Taizu turned around and gave him a meaningful look. Rong Xiu, the two of us have something to say. He was chasing him away. Ever since he became the son of Saint, Rongxiu had never been rejected like this. However, the noble holy son seemed to have expected this. He immediately stopped in his tracks and smiled. Then I won't disturb you and you. If you have any instructions, just say it. With that, he really left. His gaze turned slightly, and his deep phoenix eyes paused on Chu Liyue's face for a moment. Taizu snorted in his heart. It wasn't that easy to kidnap you. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1493. Chu Liyue followed Taizu into the house. The door closed. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly, and a faint smile flashed across his thin crimson lips. Previously he had only vaguely guessed this person's identity, but now it seemed that he was more protecting you. But this was also good. With Taizu around, she should be much more at ease. Rongxiu. Outside the barrier, Elder Wenxi suddenly appeared and waved at him. Bo Yin is looking for you. Rongxiu turned back to look at the tightly shut door and nodded slightly. He took a step forward and left with Elder Wenxi. Donghuang Bell Tower. In the main hall. When Rongxiu entered, he saw that the elders present today were all here. In addition, Mu Hongyu was also here. It seemed that she also wanted to ask about you. Rongxiu's thoughts raced, but his expression remained unchanged. Elders, may I know why you've called me here? Elder Bo Yen looked at him and said lightly. Don't you know about your princess consort? Several pairs of eyes looked over. The atmosphere seemed to freeze for a moment. Rongxiu's lips curled up slightly. I thought that you were planning to wait for Yuer to come over and ask her together. We want to, but Shangguan Jing won't let her go. Elder Huafeng pinched the space between his eyebrows. Weren't you chased out too? Rongxiu paused and slowly said, That's right. You, naturally has a lot to say to Taizu when they meet. We have a long time in the future, so we're not in a hurry. Everyone, how could he compete with Taizu? He was really hopeless. Sit down and talk. Elder Bo Yen raised his hand. There are some things that you should explain clearly first. It's the same. When that girl comes over later, we'll pick some things and ask in detail. Know yourself and your enemy and you will never be defeated. It was only today that they realized that they knew nothing about that girl. Of course, the main reason they were in such a hurry was that they wanted to confirm something immediately. Rongxiu gently nodded. All right. Elders, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. After he said that, the people present didn't know what to say for a moment. After a moment of silence, Elder Wanjing nodded. Rongxiu Shangguanyu. Other than this name, do you have any other identities? As soon as these words came out, everyone's spirit instantly tensed up. Several pairs of eyes fell on Rongxiu. Rongxiu nodded. Yes. The atmosphere in the hall instantly changed. Really? Elder Bo Yen leaned forward and asked anxiously. What identity? Rongxiu paused slightly. It's a long story, speak slowly, explain it bit by bit. The elders were obviously very concerned about this matter. Mu Hongyu, who was standing at the side, widened her eyes slightly. Her mind was filled with doubts. Ever since she was called over, she felt that something was wrong. The elders seemed to be unusually concerned about Lu Yu. Everyone here was of high status. It didn't seem appropriate for her to be here. Then I'll start from the beginning. If there's anything missing, Mu Hongyu, you can fill in the gaps later. Rongxiu said calmly. Okay. Mu Hongyu was taken aback when her name was suddenly called. She instinctively nodded. The elders' gazes swept past Mu Hongyu. The reason why they called her over was because they could tell that her relationship with Shangguanyu was not ordinary. Every bit of information they could get was important. Everyone quieted down and waited patiently. Rongxiu pondered for a moment. You, has another name, Chu Liyue. Jiang Mountain. Chu Liyue and Taizu sat opposite each other. Taizu looked at her carefully and said with concern. Look at our you, You're so tired that you've lost weight. Has it been very tiring recently? His words were heartwarming. Chu Liyue's heart warmed as she shook her head. Thank you for your concern, Taizu. It's not tiring for you, Taizu's face was full of disapproval. Those people bullied you all the way to the entrance of Lingxiao College. How can you say it's not tiring? If it were someone else, I'm afraid that only someone as outstanding as you could deal with them. Courage, wisdom, and strength. None of them could be missing. Great ancestor, actually, this time I got the Academy's help and invited them over. There have been a lot of rumors about me recently. That's why I wanted to solve all the problems in one go. Chu Luiyue briefly explained the ins and outs of the matter to Taizu. Taizu heaved a long sigh when he heard the story. After a long while he said, "It's all Taizu's fault for coming too late. If he had come earlier, Yue would not have suffered so much. She was alone, but she still had to put in so much effort to deal with so many people. Which one of them was easy to deal with?" Chu Luiyue shook her head, her eyes shining. "No, Taizu, your coming is the biggest surprise for me. You haven't told me what you are." Taizu knew that she had been wanting to ask this, so he didn't hide it. "You guessed right. That place is indeed the tomb I prepared for myself." Chu Luiyue was shocked. Prepared? For herself? Back then I left the Tianling dynasty and went to the Divine Ruins world. In the northern region of the primeval world, I accidentally obtained the inheritance of a certain expert and broke through to become a venerable artificer. At that time I was frivolous. After breaking through, I chose to enter the world and challenge several venerables in a row without losing. Taizu's tone was very calm when he talked about these glorious deeds. His old eyes were calm and filled with vicissitudes of life, as if they could contain all things. Chu Luiyue was secretly shocked. What kind of strength was this? At that time I enjoyed all the glory, so I naturally became more arrogant. No. Taizu paused. Until later I met the Great Phoenix Dragon. The Great Phoenix Dragon? Chu Luiyue was suddenly stunned. I've heard some rumors before. It said that you fought with the Great Phoenix Dragon's dragon clan, but no one said that Taizu directly fought with the Great Phoenix Dragon. Taizu sneered. Those old things are very proud. If the world knows that they were defeated by me, wouldn't they lose all their face? That one sentence contained too much information. Chu Luiyue was shocked, speechless. So the one who fought with Taizu back then was the Great Phoenix Dragon? Most importantly, the one who lost was the Great Phoenix Dragon? Before the battle, I knew that something was wrong, so I prepared a tomb in advance. Later on, it turned out that this decision was very correct. I used this method to protect my divine body. Taizu couldn't help but smile proudly. Actually, that rumor is half true. At that time, there were indeed 9 green, red, and white dragons that came to surround me, but other than that, there was also a Great Phoenix Dragon. However, they hid the existence of the Great Phoenix Dragon. After a bitter battle, I simply chose to die with those 9 dragons and suppress them. I won't come out for 1,000 years. Only that Great Phoenix Dragon took advantage of the chaos to escape. Chu Luiyue's emotions churned when he heard this, and he couldn't help but ask, Taizu, why did they treat you like this? If they were also ancient divine beasts, how could they do such a thing of using numbers to bully others? Taizu coughed. That's nothing, it's just that. I was planning to use the bones of a Great Phoenix Dragon to refine artifacts, but they found out. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1494. Chu Luiyue was speechless. It seemed that Rongxiu was right. Some things were really passed down from generation to generation. Chu Luiyue felt that she was already very good at causing trouble, but compared to her ancestor, she paled in comparison and wasn't even worth mentioning. Using the Great Phoenix Dragon skeleton to refine a weapon. What was Taizu thinking? As if embarrassed by Chu Luiyue's stare, Taizu waved his hand and explained. Actually, I didn't do it on purpose. At that time, I just thought that the skeleton was not bad and that it might belong to some divine beast, but I didn't expect it to belong to the Great Phoenix Dragon race. If I had known, I wouldn't have done that. After all, the Great Phoenix Dragon race was one of the 2 great ancient divine beasts. No matter how arrogant he was, he shouldn't have courted death like that. Chu Luiyue glanced at him faintly. Taizu looked away guiltily. Actually, it's the skeleton you obtained in the Tianling God realm back then? The corner of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched. You'd rather fight to the death with them than return it? After all, it was the skeleton of their race. This didn't seem too appropriate, especially now that she had contracted Dumpling and Zichen. She more or less understood these things. These divine beast races valued the skeletons of their own race very much and had never allowed them to wander outside. Taizu was like that. No way. Actually, when I found out that it was the skeleton of the Great Phoenix Dragon race, I wanted to return it, but they didn't listen and wanted to take my life no matter what. What could I do? I could only fight them head-on. Chu Luiyue felt a headache coming on. At that time there was really no other way. After thinking about it, I divided my soul into 3 parts. One part was hidden in the Jade Pendant, one part was hidden in the Half-God realm, and secretly sent it back to the Tianling God realm. The last part was left in the divine body to fight with them. At that time he didn't know if he could survive, so he could only choose this method. That was why his soul was scattered and his god domain was incomplete. Chu Luiyue heaved a heartfelt sigh. Taizu, your luck is truly extraordinary. He was actually able to survive in such a situation. The most important thing was that he could gather his soul, awaken his god body and come back to life. This was truly heaven-defying. Taizu sighed. Actually, this is all thanks to you. If you hadn't entered the Tianling god realm, brought my soul to the divine ruins world, found that jade pendant, and arrived at the northern region of the primordial world, even if I slept for another 10,000 years, it would be meaningless. They were connected by blood, and it was only by relying on the power of this bloodline that he finally woke up. At that time, he had no choice but to risk his life and gamble with his life. Fortunately, after 1,000 years, this bet was finally won. Chu Luiyue smiled. I've always been very lucky. In any case, it was great that Taizu was able to come back to life. Taizu smiled and nodded. Is naturally the best. Don't worry, with Taizu around in the future, no one will dare to bully you. Chu Luiyue nodded seriously, his heart calm and at ease. All right. Chu Luiyue suddenly thought of something and hesitation appeared on his face. Taizu, is the grudge between you and the great phoenix dragon considered settled? Now that you're awake, do they know? Taizu's smile suddenly froze. Chu Luiyue's heart sank, and a sense of uneasiness surged. Haha. Taizu smiled awkwardly. Although the 9 dragons are dead, the dragon race has an extremely strong perception of corpses. Now that I've woken up, the great phoenix dragon race should know, right? By the way, you've hidden that skeleton well. No one found it, right? Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. Well, maybe. Thousands of miles away. Divine Dragon Realm. Above the dark blue sea, a huge hemispherical golden barrier floated quietly, and its aura was shocking. Within the barrier there were islands in picturesque disorder. The mountains on the island were continuous and the trees were lush. Occasionally dragons would fly across the sky, their scales flickering under the sunlight. Suddenly, a dragon's roar came from the island in the center. Brr. The sound shook the sky and the aura was vast. For a moment the dragons were in awe. They lowered their heads. Then a purple-gold light suddenly flew from the island. It shot straight into the sky. It's been 1,000 years and he's still alive. This time they must not let him go. Lingxiao College. Donghuang Bell Tower. That's it? Elder Bo Yen frowned and asked. Rong Xiao nodded and glanced at Mu Hongyu. Mu Hongyu immediately said, No, that's all. No, that's all I know, Yi Zichen replied. The room fell silent again. Hongyu, there's nothing for you to do here. Go back and rest first. Elder Bo Yen thought for a moment and said. Mu Hongyu knew that they still had something to say, so she immediately responded tactfully and turned to leave. After she left, the atmosphere in the room became even stranger. The few of them looked at Rong Xiao. So, Xuanhuan has nothing to do with you, Elder Hua Feng stared at him as if he wanted to see through him. But how do you explain that she can use the Shen formation left behind by the first dean? Rong Xiao lowered his eyes. I taught her that. Is it really such a coincidence? Elder Hua Feng was full of doubts. The room fell into silence for a moment. Elder Wanzheng suddenly said, Since that's the case, I have an idea. Let Xuanhuan test the Qingyun roll again. This time all 4 rolls will be tested. Digression. I'm going out today and might not be able to return home until very late, so I'll put it on tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. There's nothing troublesome about the ranking test. Also, I'm a little curious, so I came. Seeing that Chu Luiyue's attitude was so upright and magnanimous, the elders were a little hesitant. Could it be were they really wrong? Then let's not talk nonsense. Let's start. Elder Bo Yen thought for a while. Now that you're already at the middle stage of the 9th level, it's your biggest improvement. Why don't you try the ranking first? First? Chu Luiyue's sharp senses caught this word. She thought about it and immediately understood. So there was more than one ranking test. She smiled and walked to the front of the warrior ranking board without hesitation. The few elders turned their gazes over. Although their expressions were calm, the surging waves in their eyes showed that they were not so calm in their hearts. Chu Luiyue raised her hand and placed it on the black stone wall. Her hand seemed especially slender and white against the dark and deep stone wall. The two extreme colors intertwined and seemed to be fixed into a painting. Chu Luiyue held her breath. The few elders couldn't help but feel nervous. Suddenly, Chu Luiyue felt a gaze on her. She turned her head and looked at Rongxiu. His phoenix eyes were deep and unfathomable. With just a glance, it was as if one would be drawn into it, forgetting everything and choosing to sink into it. It's just a test. Don't be nervous. Just do your best. A light smile flashed across Rongxiu's lips as he asked gently. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat and she nodded. Then she retracted her gaze and looked at the stone wall in front of her. In the next moment, she activated the force in her body and it surged out. Buzz. With a buzzing sound, the green cloud ranking appeared. On the black stone wall, countless streaks of light flickered and quickly condensed into names. The warrior ranking appeared. Almost at the same time, the dark area at the very top that had been deliberately covered up suddenly loosened. Crack. This movement was extremely small, as if something was trying to break out from inside. But from the outside, no abnormality could be seen. Therefore, Elder Bo Yin and the others did not notice this small movement. However, Chu Luiyue's palm was on the green cloud ranking. She could immediately detect any small change on it. She almost subconsciously wanted to raise her head to take a look. But this impulse only flashed past her heart. She remained calm and collected, concealing these emotions. Force continued to surge out. Crack crack. The sound became more frequent and it seemed to be louder than before. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be beating violently along with this sound. The elders looked at each other and saw the confusion and suspicion in each other's eyes. It's been a while, why hasn't Xuanhuan's name appeared on it? Middle stage 9th stage was not considered high among the students of Lingxiao College. Chapter 1496. The person who shouted was Elder Bo Yin. He quickly flew into the air and looked in the direction of Thousand Wine Mountain with a shocked expression. The other elders also reacted immediately and followed one after another. It was no wonder that they had such a big reaction. Something unusual had really happened at Thousand Wine Mountain. Above the sky, layers of dark clouds rolled over and finally gathered above Thousand Wine Mountain, covering the sky and the sun. The wind whistled and thunder rumbled. And that loud sound was the sound of thunder coming from the clouds. It was so powerful that it shook one's heart. Chu Luiyue looked at this scene and couldn't help but frown slightly. What's going on? Every mountain peak in the academy had been specially set up with enchantments. And Thousand Wine Mountains was especially special. Ever since Chu Luiyue caused trouble there, Elder Bo Yin and the others had specially strengthened the barrier outside the mountain. Compared to the other mountains, Thousand Wine Mountain's barrier was definitely top-notch. As a result, any movement on the Thousand Wine Mountain would be blocked by the barrier. From the outside, no one could detect any problems at all. Otherwise, when Chu Luiyue transferred the Dragon Abyss Sword Soul to Scarlet Heaven Sword at Thousand Wine Mountain, it would have already spread in the academy and caused an uproar. Yet now, the natural abnormal sign had actually managed to bypass the spirit formation. This scale and aura was much stronger than what she had seen in the past. Countless thoughts flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind, but she couldn't figure out a precise possibility. What's going on? This shocking commotion quickly attracted the attention of the entire academy. Countless figures flew out from the various mountains. Everyone looked in the direction of the terrifying commotion. What's going on? Why is there such a big commotion? Could it be that someone is about to break through? Look at that direction, it seems to be Thousand Wine Mountain. Could it be that an elder is refining a weapon? Refining weapons shouldn't be like this. Because they were worried that refining weapons would disturb everyone, the elders set up layers of barriers on the mountain over there. Under normal circumstances, this kind of situation wouldn't happen. I really don't know what's going on this time. But that's really the location of Thousand Wine Mountain, right? Did something happen to Mount Thousand Wine again? Everyone was talking about it. Not long ago, when the Thousand Wine Mountain was forcefully closed, they felt that something was wrong. Who would have thought that there would be such a huge commotion today? Elder Bo Yin stared at Thousand Wine Mountain with a heavy gaze. Why did this happen all of a sudden? They had checked it several times before and there was no problem. Calculating the time, it shouldn't be now. His expression was cold and stern as he spoke in a deep voice. Wensi, immediately summon the academy's elders and lead the students to gather at Qingming Plaza. Yes. Huafeng Wanjing, come with me. The two elders were clearly aware of the seriousness of the matter and nodded in silence. Elder Bo Yin took a step forward and turned back to take a look. Rongxiu, protect her. Rongxiu nodded. Elders, be careful. Elder Bo Yin and the others headed straight for xuanhuan Mountain. The entire academy was in chaos. Chu Luiyue put down his hand. The light on the warrior ranking quickly dissipated and returned to calmness. That frightening cracking sound no longer appeared. However, that familiar feeling lingered in her heart and could not be erased. Chu Luiyue stared at the black stone wall and finally looked up. The name that was covered was still dark, and his appearance could not be seen. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips and felt complicated. A large, dry and warm hand suddenly reached over and held hers. Chu Luiyue turned around. What are you thinking about? Rongxiu asked. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. She could tell that Rongxiu did not want the elders to know her identity. xuanhuan Mountain is related to you? Her voice was very low, as if it was about to dissipate with the wind. Rongxiu shook his head and intertwined his fingers with hers. I don't know either. He did have a way to hide it from everyone, but before he could use it, something happened at xuanhuan Mountain. He raised his gaze slightly and looked at the pressure and momentum that were still increasing. He quickly frowned. Then he held Chu Luiyue's hand tightly and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, I'm here." Chu Luiyue was stunned, and then a white light flashed through her mind. Wait, could it be that the incident at xuanhuan Mountain had something to do with her? To a large extent, Dumpling was able to break through to the Crimson Gold Heavenly Phoenix realm because of the spring at xuanhuan Mountain. She was originally a little worried, but after Dumpling broke through, xuanhuan Mountain was calm as usual. Everything was as usual, so she did not take this matter to heart. Now that she saw the abnormality at xuanhuan Mountain, she suddenly remembered this. Countless thoughts flashed through her mind. xuanhuan Mountain had a special status in Lingxiao College. Although the students often went there to play, they did not dare to act rashly. This was also one of the reasons why the elders let them go up without worry. However, after she came, she caused a ruckus there twice. It was obvious that the elders of the college were accumulating Tianlei in the spring. Although she still didn't know what it was used for, the elders obviously wouldn't waste their time on it. And most of those Tianlei had been devoured by Dumpling. Didn't that mean she lifted her foot and was about to step forward? Rongxiu pulled her back, looked at her calmly and shook his head gently. Wait first. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat, but after hesitating for a moment she finally chose to wait on the spot. If there really was any trouble, she could not absolve herself from the blame. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1497. More and more students and elders gathered at Qingming Square. Many of them had not realized what was going on and were still in a daze. However, many of them were so shocked that their jaws almost dropped when they saw Rongxiu and Chu Luiyue. They knew Rongxiu, but who was the girl next to him? She looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. Her clothes were simple, but it did not hide her beauty. Her appearance could topple a city, and her grace was outstanding as well. Just by standing there, she seemed to have gathered all the light. Everything around him seemed to have become much dimmer. Except for Rongxiu. Seeing the two tightly clasped hands and their intimate posture, almost everyone felt as if they had been hit in the head with a stick and were dumbfounded. Since when did Rongxiu get so close to a girl? Moreover, why did this woman look so familiar? Chu Luiyue and the others had just returned, and the elders had been wondering about her identity, so they did not pay attention to the school. The incident in Fang State City had not spread, so no one knew about it. Lu Yu. Mu Hongyu had just left the Donghuang Bell Tower when she was summoned by the elders. She immediately saw Rongxiu and Chu Luiyue standing in the middle. She had no choice. She stood out from the crowd and was too eye-catching. Chu Luiyue was pulled back from her thoughts by the crisp sound. She looked up and saw Mu Hongyu. She waved at her. The surrounding people subconsciously made way for her. Mu Hongyu walked over quickly without any hindrance. She had not seen Chu Luiyue's familiar face for a long time. Moreover, she had not had the chance to talk to her in Fang State City, so she could not help but feel a little emotional when she saw her now. She wanted to jump into Chu Luiyue's arms, but before she could do so, she felt a cold gaze sweep past her. Mu Hongyu coughed and stood in front of Chu Luiyue politely. She did not dare to touch her. Lu Yu, why didn't you rest well before coming here? She hadn't even had the time to change her clothes yet. Chu Luiyue smiled. Something happened here, so I came here. Mu Hongyu thought she was talking about the loud sound just now, so she nodded and looked at Wan Jiushan. Us too. The elders asked us to come here quickly. I don't know what happened. She had not been in the school for long, so she was naturally not sure about the situation. Chu Luiyue. Let's wait here. The elders should be able to handle it. Mu Hongyu did not suspect and nodded. On the other side, Luo Shishir, Luo Yanlin, and the others also walked over. When he saw Chu Luiyue, Luo Yanlin's face darkened. Unlike the others, he had already heard about what happened outside from Luo Yanming and the others. Naturally, he knew that the so-called Chu Yu's true identity was Shangguan Yu, the rumored princess of the Yintian Tower. In other words, she was Rong Xiu's woman. After hearing all that, Luo Yanlin felt terrible. When he saw her in person, his feelings were even more complicated. His sister actually fell in love with a woman. Originally, he had already thought that if she really insisted, he would ask Chu Yu for her opinion. Fortunately, he did not do that. Otherwise, he would have lost all his face. Luo Yanlin was angry. However, when he thought about it carefully, it was his sister's unrequited love from the beginning to the end. Chu Yu had always been restrained and polite. There was nothing wrong with it. At the end of the day, he could not blame her. Luo Yanlin could only silently swallow his blood. His sister was going to snatch someone from Rong Xiu. Just thinking about it was exciting enough. He took a deep breath and glanced at Luo Shishir. Fortunately, Luo Shishir had basically regained her composure. This was the only thing that comforted him. On the other hand, Zhuosheng was being pulled by many people to ask what had happened in Fang State City and who the beautiful woman who had suddenly appeared was. Zhuosheng was stunned by the questions and scratched his head casually. Her? She's Chu Yu? Everyone was in an uproar. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that the gazes on her had become even more anxious. Fortunately, her psychological endurance had always been quite good, so she did not take these things to heart. Her eyes were fixed on Thousand Wine Mountain. If Rong Xiu had not held her back, she would have already rushed over. The surrounding people obviously did not realize the seriousness of the matter at Thousand Wine Mountain. Zhuosheng was annoyed after being asked so many questions, so he decided to tell them everything. Of course, he chose the exciting content to say. Everyone exclaimed in surprise as they listened, their hearts filled with shock. Almost everyone's attention was focused on Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu. I really didn't expect Chu Yu to be from Shangguan Yu? So she's the princess that senior brother Rong Xiu personally chose. No wonder senior brother Rong Xiu treats her so well. Didn't they say that she's an outsider? But her talent is too amazing. And that weapon refining venerable is actually her Taizu. With such a background, who dares to say that she's not worthy? Am I the only one who noticed that she broke through from the early stage of the 8th stage to the middle stage of the 9th stage in just a few months? Oh, I'm already numb. There was no other way. This person could casually pick out any one of them and it would make others envious and jealous. After a few times, one would get used to it. Chu Luiyue did not care about this at this moment. Dumpling, did you leave any evidence in the spring of Thousand Wine Mountain? She asked in her heart. Dumpling was stunned for a moment and looked hesitant. I don't think so. Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. However, at this moment, a fluctuation suddenly spread out from the barrier outside the academy. At the same time, a deep and vast dragon's roar resounded throughout the world. Shengguan Jing. Get out here. Digression. 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. It was obvious that they were serious. If he didn't handle it well, he was afraid. Don't worry. This is Taizu's own business. It won't implicate you in Lingxiao College. Taizu patted Chu Luiyue's head gently and said in a gentle voice. Chu Luiyue frowned. You, is a descendant of the Shangguan clan. Naturally, we should advance and retreat together with Taizu. Taizu was stunned when he heard that. Endless emotions seemed to surge in his eyes. In the end, thousands of words turned into one sentence. Good you? The Shangguan clan had never been afraid of any danger. Don't worry. When I chose to wake up this time, I knew that I would have to face all of this. The great ancestor laughed out loud. Just wait in the college. Taizu will solve these problems. But, Chu Luiyue wanted to go out with him, but on second thought, she might only be a burden if she went, so she swallowed the rest of her words. Then you must be careful. Taizu nodded and looked at Rong Xiu meaningfully. Rong Xiu nodded calmly. Taizu was relieved. His figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. Chu Luiyue raised her gaze slightly and looked in the direction of the college's gate. She knew that at this moment, the great phoenix dragon was waiting for them outside. She didn't know if Taizu could successfully solve these problems this time. Chu Luyue slowly clenched her fists. The reason why she was so worried was that Taizu and the Great Void Phoenix Dragon clan had been accumulating hatred for a long time. On the other hand, back then when she helped Zichen reconstruct his body, she used the 2 wing bones of the Great Void Phoenix Dragon's corpse. Although the remaining corpse had been sealed in the Heavenly Square Cauldron. But now that the Great Void Phoenix Dragon clan was outside the college's barrier, she felt that this would be a big hidden danger. It was like a time bomb that would explode at any time. Boom. Another loud sound was heard. It was from the Thousand Wine Mountain. Chu Luyue frowned and looked back. Dark clouds gathered in the sky above the Thousand Wine Mountain, forming a huge vortex. The sky was dark and a storm swept through as if it was going to swallow the Thousand Wine Mountain. Thunder rumbled from the clouds and silver snake-like lightning swam everywhere. From time to time, it lit up half the sky, but it made everything seem even more treacherous and terrifying. The storm was coming. From here, one could vaguely see the figures of Elder Bo Yen and the others rushing towards the Thousand Wine Mountain. In the gloomy world, their figures actually seemed so small and insignificant. Chu Luyue slowly clenched her fists. Thousand Wine Mountain. When Elder Bo Yen and the others arrived, they found that the barrier outside the mountain had already shattered. This was also one of the reasons why this commotion was clearly seen by everyone. But this was not the thing that worried the elders the most. Because the spring at the top of the mountain had stopped flowing. It was still daytime. The spring seems to be freezing. Elder Wanjing shouted in a deep voice, and there was a rare trace of panic in his eyes. How could this be? Elder Huafeng sucked in a breath of cold air. There's so much Tianlei inside. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be at this time. Elder Bo Yen made a prompt decision. Immediately lead Tianlei into the spring. At this time, there was no time to think about why this would happen. The most important thing now was to solve the problem. Elder Wanzheng and Elder Huafeng nodded solemnly. Elder Bo Yen took the lead and with a flash he went straight for the spring. Boom. Suddenly, a bolt of heavenly lightning struck down. It fell in front of Elder Bo Yen. Sparks flew everywhere. The violent and terrifying energy seemed to want to tear everything apart. Elder Bo Yen was shocked and immediately set up a barrier in front of him. At the same time he retreated. However, his chest was still hit by the aftershock. Bo Yen. How are you? Are you okay? The 2 elders immediately went forward and supported him. Elder Bo Yen shook his head, but his expression was very ugly. I'm fine. But this spring, at this moment the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. They looked up and saw that it was Elder Ouyang. His expression was anxious as he quickly ran over. When he saw the frost at the edge of the spring, he could not help but be shocked and immediately cursed. Who the F***ck stole the Tianlei power from here? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1499. These words caused Elder Bo Yen and the others to be stunned on the spot. Ouyang, what did you say? Tianlei's power had been stolen? How was this possible? Elder Ouyang's figure flashed and flew to the side of the few of them. His expression was anxious and angry as he pointed at the spring. The Tianlei's power that had accumulated for several years inside. If it wasn't stolen, how could it suddenly erupt? He had been wandering around here every day, but he hadn't noticed it at all. Now that it had happened so suddenly, it would be difficult to deal with it. Then what should we do? Elder Huafeng was at a loss. This Thousand Wine Mountain had a special status. Under normal circumstances, it was mainly guarded by Elder Ouyang and the other weapon refiners in the academy. The other elders would at most play a supporting role. Although they knew that the Thousand Wine Mountain was important and that the spring was very precious and could not be touched casually, most of them did not know the specific situation. Now that it had happened so suddenly, they could only be anxious, but they did not know what to do. Elder Ouyang rubbed his face in annoyance. What should we do? What should we do? The freezing of the spring proves that a lot of the Tianlei's power has been stolen. Even if all the weapon refiners in the academy were to refine weapons together and trigger the Tianlei, I'm afraid it would be too late. One had to know that in order to control this spring, they had been working diligently for several years and had spent a lot of effort. Now that something had happened, how could they save it in time? The few of them realized the seriousness of the matter and fell silent with solemn expressions. At this moment, another figure was rapidly approaching them. They raised their heads and saw that it was Shang Yusen. He frowned and looked at them. The spring has started to freeze. Why are you all still here? Shang Yusen, why are you still in the academy? Elder Hua Feng asked in surprise. According to the previous pattern, he would not stay in the academy for more than a month. But this time he had been back for a long time and he had not left yet. Shang Yusen resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Hua Feng, what time is it now? You still have the mood to care about this? Actually, he just wanted to stay in the academy for a while longer and look for Chuyu to study the Scarlet Heaven Sword more. He didn't expect that a bunch of messy things had happened recently, so it had been delayed. Today it was even worse. The boy had turned into a girl. Where is that senior xuanhuan? Shang Yusen went straight to the point. He's a weapon refining venerable. If he's willing to help, there might be some hope. Elder Ouyang slapped his head. How could I have forgotten about that? Although the matter was quite troublesome, they still had a ready-made big helper. However, when Elder Bo Yen and the others heard this, their expressions changed slightly. When they arrived, they also heard the dragon roar as well as the low roar filled with threat and warning. It seems like some dragons have come to cause trouble for him. He shouldn't be in the academy now. Elder Bo Yen said solemnly. Shang Yusen and Elder Ouyang looked at each other. Obviously they were still a little confused. Dragon race? What's going on? Danqing went to deal with it. We don't know what happened exactly. But that person suppressed 9 dragons in the graveyard of the northern region of the primordial desolate land. If I'm not wrong, he should have a lot of enmity with the dragon clan. Elder Bo Yen guessed with some uncertainty. If it wasn't for the situation at Thousand Wine Mountain, they would have followed him over. What's going on? Elder Ouyang crossed his hands. To be able to make the dragon clan chase after them with such fanfare, it definitely isn't a small matter. By the way, do you know which branch of the dragon clan it is? The few of them shook their heads. They didn't even go to take a look, so how would they know? The other party's pressure is extremely strong. I'm afraid it won't be easy to deal with. If that's the case, then I'm afraid he won't be back for a while. Shang Yusen looked at the spring eye. The layer of frost had started to appear from the edge, and a quarter of it had already frozen. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before the spring eye was completely frozen. At that time, I'm afraid, during this period of time, we have been carefully watching over it. There are no abnormalities with the spring eye. How did so much of the heavenly lightning's power get stolen out of nowhere? Elder Ouyang really couldn't understand. Under normal circumstances, when something like this happened, they would definitely be aware of it. Elder Bo Yen suddenly thought of something and his expression changed. Hua Feng, when did Chuyu, that red-tailed phoenix in Xianhuan, break through to become a crimson gold heavenly phoenix? Elder Hua Feng pondered for a moment, then his eyes widened slightly. Could it be that you suspect, for the red-tailed phoenix to break through the shackles and become an ancient divine beast, it needs a lot of power? The Tianlei power accumulated in the spring eye is obviously the most suitable. But this doesn't mean that this matter has something to do with her, right? If it was really her red-tailed phoenix who did it, why didn't we notice it at all? The few of them fell silent. This was also what they were most puzzled about. Over the years they had put in a lot of effort on Thousand Wine Mountain. They were basically clear about any fluctuations that occurred in the spring eye. However, they didn't know that the Tianlei power had been stolen. No matter what, call her over and ask her first. Elder Bo Yen instructed. Elder Hua Feng could only agree. Okay. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu had just returned to the Qingming Plaza when they saw Elder Hua Feng return. When he saw Elder Hua Feng heading straight for him, Chu Luiyue knew something was wrong. Elder Hua Feng waved at her. Bo Yen wants you to go. Chu Luiyue didn't ask any more questions. He took a deep breath and followed her. Seeing that Rong Xiu seemed to be planning to go with them, Elder Hua Feng originally wanted to stop them, but after thinking about it, he decided against it and quickly brought the two of them to the Thousand Wine Mountain. Only the people on the Qingming Square were left bewildered. In front of the Thousand Wine Mountain, Chu Luiyue glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw that there was a layer of frost on the mouth of the spring. From the serious looks on the elders' faces, she knew that they were in big trouble this time. Elder Bo Yan's gaze was sharp. He pointed at the spring and went straight to the point. Girl, does this matter have anything to do with you? At the same time, outside the academy's barrier, the two forces were in a stalemate. Inside the barrier was Shangguan Jing and a few elders of the academy. Outside the barrier was a tall man who looked to be in his 50s. Behind him stood a few young juniors. The man standing at the front was wearing a gray robe. His hair was white and his eyes were purplish gold. On his neck and hands, there were faint purplish gold scales the size of fingernails. Under the sunlight, they reflected a sparkling glow. He stared at Xuanhuan coldly and sneered. "Xuanhuan, you're lucky. Hand over the corpses of my clansmen and I'll let you die in one piece." Digression. An excavator in his lower abdomen had shoveled away half a mountain. It had been in pain since dawn until now. He struggled to get up. 9 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1500. Hearing this, the expressions of the elders standing inside the barrier changed slightly. Who exactly was this person? He was so domineering. Xuanhuan was a top-notch weapon refining supremacy in the Divine Ruins world. How could they be so rude? Elder Danqing had just arrived when he encountered this situation. He could not help but frown. Senior Xuanhuan. He flew to Xuanhuan's side and quickly sized up the people outside the barrier. He was secretly shocked. From the looks of it, he was indeed from the Dragon Clan. However, why was the color of their scales a little off? He cupped his hands. "I am Elder Danqing of Lingxiao College. May I know why you are here today?" However, the old man opposite him only glanced at him before quickly retracting his gaze. His gaze was cold and indifferent, as if he was looking at an ant. It was obvious that he did not take Elder Danqing seriously at all. Elder Danqing's heart surged with anger. Although his status in the academy was not as high as Elder Bo Yan's, it was definitely not low. Even the people from the first-rate aristocratic families would be polite when they saw him. He had never seen such an arrogant person. He knew that the dragon race had always been arrogant, but this was too much. "Everyone, you came rashly without informing us in advance. Moreover, you are so arrogant in front of Lingxiao College. Aren't you going a little overboard?" Elder Danqing's face darkened. The old man finally glanced at Elder Danqing again. A trace of impatience appeared on his indifferent face. "Who do you think you are? Are you worthy of questioning me here?" "You," Elder Danqing was about to retort when Xuanhuan stopped him. He smiled and said, "This is between us. Why implicate others?" When Elder Danqing heard this, he had a bad feeling. What kind of status did Xuanhuan have? Previously, in Fangzhou City there were so many people present, but he did not show a good expression. However, now that the person who came was so domineering, there was no anger on his face. In fact, his tone was rather polite. The other party's identity was probably even more shocking than he had expected. "Xuanhuan, stop talking nonsense. This time, even if you were hiding in Lingxiao College, it would be easy for me to take your life. If you have the guts, come out immediately and hide inside. Even if you don't feel cowardly, I feel ashamed for you." The person who came had a very bad temper and spoke very straightforwardly. His words were filled with anger. Xuanhuan didn't seem to be angry. Instead he laughed. "Mao Yao, after so many years, your tone is still as arrogant as ever. Leave his corpse intact?" He had to have the ability to kill Xuanhuan first. Upon hearing this name, Elder Danqing was momentarily stunned. "Mao Yao. Why does this name sound so familiar?" Suddenly his heart shook. Her eyes suddenly widened as she looked at the man outside the barrier. "Mao Yao? Wasn't that the one who was rather famous in the Great Void Phoenix Dragon race?" It was rumored that 1,000 years ago, there was a family that had obtained a Great Phoenix Dragon egg by chance. They secretly brought the dragon egg back and wanted to force a contract with it. Unfortunately, before he could take action, he was caught by the Great Phoenix Dragon. That time, the Great Phoenix Dragon had only sent 3 people. Mao Yao was one of them. Although it was only a second-rate family, its strength was at its peak at that time. There were even 2 god venerables holding down the fort. It was even stronger than some of the declining first-rate families and clans. If they could contract with that Great Phoenix Dragon egg, they might be able to reach a higher level. Unfortunately, they had lost this opportunity forever. Mao Yao and the other 2 only used a day and a night to slaughter their entire clan. After the news spread, the entire Divine Ruins world was shocked. As one of the 2 great ancient divine beasts, the Great Phoenix Dragon had always been filled with mystery in everyone's impression. Many people might not have the chance to see the Great Phoenix Dragon in their entire lives. As a result, the names of Mao Yao and the other 2 became the representatives of the Great Phoenix Dragon race from then on. Elder Danqing had never thought that he would actually be able to see this legendary figure. He had never thought that it would be under such circumstances. Why did Mao Yao suddenly come here and want to kill Xuanhuan? It seemed that there had been a long grudge between them. What was going on? Mao Yao sneered. You're extremely cunning and sinister. Back then you deceived everyone and escaped a calamity. Today you won't have that chance anymore. You would definitely not make the same mistake twice. Xuanhuan spread his hands. I know you want that corpse, but it's not in my hands now. You're lying. Mao Yao did not believe his words at all. Back then you spent so much effort to hide that corpse. If it's not in your hands, where is it? 8,000 years have passed. Xuanhuan suddenly raised his voice. The world has changed. Things remain the same, but people have changed. Don't tell me you don't know what the primordial north region is like now. I've been in a deep sleep for 1,000 years. What happened? What did I lose? How did I control it? If you don't believe me, you can search me. As Xuanhuan spoke, he lifted his foot and was about to walk out. Senior Xuanhuan. Elder Danqing hurriedly went forward and blocked his path. This is a serious matter. You must think twice. The Great Void Phoenix Dragon clan had come aggressively. Who knew if they would attack Xuanhuan the moment he went out? This person was still in Lingxiao College. How could anything happen to him? Mao Yao stared at Xuanhuan as if he wanted to see something from his face. However, both of them were old foxes. One hid his thoughts deeper than the other. No one could guess who was the other. Xuanhuan, if you really have a clear conscience, come out directly. I have my ways to check if that corpse is on you. If that thing is really not with you, we'll forget about today's matter. But if we find out anything, don't blame us for being rude. Mao Yao could not be bothered to talk nonsense. At this moment he did not rush forward, break the barrier, and drag Xuanhuan over on account of Lingxiao College. No one knew how furious he was when he found out that Xuanhuan was still alive. The next moment Xuanhuan said straightforwardly, "All right." Everyone present was shocked. Elder Danqing wanted to stop him again. Senior Xuanhuan, they're here to look for me. It has nothing to do with Lingxiao College or you. You don't have to get involved in this. Xuanhuan said with a smile. Besides, I have a clear conscience. What's there to be afraid of? As he spoke, he looked at the elder in charge of guarding the barrier. The two elders looked at each other and finally opened the barrier hesitantly. Xuanhuan took a step forward. Both sides were in a stalemate. Xuanhuan opened his arms. If you want to investigate, just do it. Mao Yao sneered. Let's see how long you can be stubborn. As he spoke, he closed his eyes and crossed his hands in front of him. Then a purple gold light bloomed in his palm. A piece of purple gold translucent scale flew into the air. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1501. The scale armor slowly flew around Xuanhuan body, as if it was checking something bit by bit. Xuanhuan could feel a subtle force sweeping across his body, but his expression remained the same. He put one hand behind his back and raised his chin slightly, calm and composed. The corpse was indeed not with him now, so of course nothing could be found. Mao Yao looked at the scale armor that did not have any reaction and gradually frowned. Could it be that it really was not there? But back then Xuanhuan had formed a grudge with them because of that corpse. How could he bear to give up just like that? Finally the scale armor flew around Xuanhuan, but it still did not find anything. Xuanhuan laughed. How is it? Do you believe me now? Mao Yao's brows were still tightly knitted, and his face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost, cold to the bone. Who knows what method you used to hide it? This Xuanhuan could even deceive them about his life and death. Hiding a corpse was not a small matter. The smile on Xuanhuan face faded a little. Mao Yao, what happened back then was indeed my fault, but I sincerely apologize to all of you. It was you who refused to forgive me and wanted to take my life no matter what. I had no choice but to choose to escape. As for me faking my death to deceive you, may I ask, who doesn't want to live well in this world? I don't think I deserve to die, so of course I won't let you bully me to death. Moreover, I have been sleeping for 1,000 years. I don't know anything. It's no different from being dead. Even if it's to forgive me, it's enough. Today you came to kill me without any reason. I tolerated it and even agreed to let you search me. This is enough to show my sincerity, right? What else do you want? His attitude had always been good before, but now he suddenly became tough, as if he had changed into a different person. The elders inside the barrier trembled with fear when they heard this. At this moment he was still outside the barrier, only a short distance away from Mao Yao and the others. If they wanted to make a move, Xuanhuan might not be able to escape successfully. At this moment his words were sharp and even a little ear-piercing. The elders broke out in cold sweat for him. Mao Yao's expression changed as he stared at him for a long time. You really don't know? Xuanhuan Jing snorted. It's up to you to believe it or not. I've already said what I wanted to say. After saying this, he actually turned around and went back. Hey you! The young men behind him were a little dissatisfied when they saw this. Just as they were about to say something, they were stopped by Mao Yao. In the territory of Lingxiao College, they had to give him some face. It was not appropriate to kill him directly. He had said that he did not want to kill Xuanhuan Jing by killing Xuanhuan Jing. He could kill him at any time, but it was more important to find his corpse. Is by luck. He frowned as countless guesses flashed through his mind. With a thought, the piece of scale flew back to him. However, just as the scale armor was about to fall back into his palm, it suddenly changed direction and flew towards the direction of the Spirit Firmament Academy. See, the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. The scales drew a straight purple-gold line in the air. One of Xuanhuan Jing's feet had already stepped back into the boundary. His muscles tensed up when he heard the noise. A strong sense of danger welled up in his heart. Without thinking, he quickened his pace and entered. Seal the barrier. He let out a deep shout. The two elders who were in charge of guarding the barrier were shocked when they heard that. They instinctively attacked. However, they were fast, but the scale was even faster. In the blink of an eye, it had already flown in. Xuanhuan Jing immediately turned his head and saw a purple gold flash past his eyes. The next moment, that thing brushed past his cheek and flew in a certain direction in the academy. It was terrifyingly fast, causing Xuanhuan Jing's face to feel a slight but clear cut. He looked in the direction that the thing was flying, and his heart skipped a beat. It was flying towards Xuanhuan Mountain. Senior Xuanhuan, this Elder Danqing, was also momentarily stunned. Strengthen the barrier of the academy. Don't let them in. As Xuanhuan Jing spoke, he had already disappeared from the spot. He chased after that piece of scale. Behind him, outside the barrier, Mao Yao had already reacted. He gritted his teeth. It's really inside. Xuanhuan Jing, just you wait. Xuanhuan Mountain. Facing Elder Bo Yan's questioning, Chu Liyue's hands in her sleeves quietly tightened. Previously, it was not that the elders did not suspect her. They had even called her to Xuanhuan Mountain to question her carefully. She had always denied it. Because there was no evidence and there were basically no major problems, most of the matters were left unsettled in the end. But it was different this time. Even though she didn't know what secrets were hidden in the spring, she could roughly guess from the current situation that this matter wasn't simple. Although the red-tailed red phoenix has the bloodline of the crimson gold heavenly phoenix, it is almost 1 in 10,000 to successfully break through. As for yours, it completed its transformation in just a few months after entering the academy. Is this due to the power of Tianlei in the spring? Elder Bo Yan's question was very direct. Chu Liyue's heart wavered. She. Just as she spoke, a cold wind suddenly blew from behind. Danger. Her heart skipped a beat and she immediately dodged to the side. At the same time, Rong Xiu had already made his move. A golden barrier quickly appeared around Chu Liyue. However, in the next moment, a crack appeared on the barrier. Chu Liyue turned around in shock and saw a purple-gold translucent scale that was extremely sharp and embedded into the barrier set up by Rong Xiu. The scale was half the size of an adult's palm. The edges were extremely thin and sharp. It was wrapped in a turbulent aura. Chu Liyue was very familiar with that aura. This was the scale of the great phoenix dragon. Crack. The barrier shattered. The scale went straight for Chu Liyue's dantian. Digression. Everyone have a good rest. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.